welcome to the U.S. Congress. I think maybe you can hear what is happening here. We have all this great stuff. I'm going to mute it for a little while. But welcome. I'm going to look at the chat here. And yeah, we'll see what happens with the old State of the Union here. I thought it would be fun to stream and maybe we could watch it together. I'm really happy I got invited to be here on the floor of the U.S. Congress here, House of Representatives here. Very, very fortunate myself. I wonder if people are going to come to this thing. Oh, yeah. This is a little strange. My Discord is being a little strange, but that's okay. Hopefully people will come and watch me live in the Senate here. Everyone's being extremely still because I told them to be very still for my shot. But on the other part of the Congress where I'm not, they're free to move around on the other screen, as you can see. I want them to be still for the perfection of my shot. But yeah, here we are, State of the Union time. I'll turn the volume. I wonder if you guys can hear it okay. Please let me know if there's any volume issues or anything. Should be coming through okay. But I thought we'd do the C-SPAN stream because I think it'll be probably the most non-disruptive one. And yeah, I'm happy to answer your questions about rhetoric, public speaking, especially State of the Union questions. I know a little bit about State of the Union rhetorical criticism. Maybe you do too. Maybe you'd like to know something about it. I don't know. Yeah. Let's see if I can share this somehow. Oh, no audio besides myself. We'll see how we can fix that. I probably should have played with this a little bit earlier before we got into it. Okay, maybe now. Maybe now you can hear the other one? And Stefan, you're absolutely right. Yeah, Stefan's absolutely correct. So yeah, happy to chat about anything you might be interested in terms of, I'll make some comments, but also we can have the chat. I wonder if the chat would look pretty good next to it. That's maybe too many things on the screen at once, but maybe I'll put the chat up if we get into a good conversation. Or if there's a lot of comments about stuff. We'll have to see. All right, maybe now you can hear the maybe now you can hear the other window. Maybe not. So I turned off the mix minus, so maybe that'll let some of the background chatter in. Please let me know if there are any issues. Oh, it's working now. Excellent, Kyle. Thank you for the feedback and welcome. Actually, I realize I have a sound meter. I'm like very sort of technically not so proficient with this software, so kind of new to me. You need volume of what's going on in the Senate. They're all chatting with each other. Pretty soon, that old guy is going to come in here and shout about the president coming. Might be the same guy.
Mr. Speaker, the Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court.
It's nice that they can make it. I don't really know if we need a Brett Kavanaugh cam, but that's what we got there for a second. Welcome, Donald. So one of the things about the State of the Union is it was often just a written report for most of the U.S. history. I think you guys probably know that already. But it didn't become a speech event, like a public speech event, until quite recently. Some really famous presidents didn't like public speaking, most notably Thomas Jefferson, who, when he did it, only did it to the Senate. Yeah, Kyle is asking a good question here. I think this is a good one to talk about for a second. So, I think people kind of are interested in it, not necessarily as an argument, but more of like ritual. It's more of political theater, some people would say, but I like to think of it as a civic ritual. Like it's something we all do. It kind of helps us identify and feel like we're being good citizens, good Americans to listen to it. I think the key word for tonight, when we're thinking about being generally favorable towards the idea of having it, it's like this big ritual thing, is that a president will use the State of the Union to try to change attitudes about things. So it's a very light, persuasive move instead of like a hard sell. So I think it's a good idea to try to think about it. Like, what is Joe Biden going to do to try to move attitudes around about different policies or different things going on in the country? I think that might be something to look for. I like to think of attitude instead of like right or wrong or like a binary in persuasion, just because I just don't think binary is a very constructive way to think about it. I think you think about changing attitudes is good. And it'll be interesting to see how he starts. So in traditional Roman oratory, the start of a speech is called the exordium. And that's generally where you prepare the audience for what you're about to say. Usually mention some common values, some common attitudes and feelings.
The president's cabinet.
You try to start where the audience is and bring them towards what it is that you want to talk about. That's the exordium. And then after that, we get the narratio, which is the state of the case. What's going on? What are the things in the case that we need to be aware of? What's the story so far? And the partatio is where the changes are going to be suggested. What's the attitude that you're going to have to adjust, or what attitude should be adjusted? Notice the passive voice there. Sometimes presidents don't like to be very accusatory, so they talk to the passive voice a lot of times, like, an attitude must change, this kind of thing, rather than your attitude must change. We remember Jimmy Carter's great national malaise speech that is thought of as one of the worst presidential speeches of all time, precisely because he was thought of as telling people, hey, you have a bad attitude. It's not my fault. What's going on? You're welcome, Donald. I love C-SPAN. I've done a lot of work with C-SPAN. I've published with them a few times in the research, the presidential research, and political research and review, and I've been to their research center at Purdue University, and they're wonderful folks out there. And this is on YouTube that they're just streaming this, and it looks pretty good, I think. I hope it looks good on your end. And Pete Buttigieg got a haircut there, I think. I think last time I saw him on TV was about the airline stuff, so that was a while ago. Everybody's so happy to see each other. So yeah, your thoughts are completely and totally welcome in the chat throughout the speech. I'll talk from time to time. I have the C-SPAN's running the captions, not YouTube, so the captions should be pretty accurate. So if I talk over anything, you might be able to tell what's being said. I'll point out things I think are interesting. I'm not going to do a political analysis of it. It's not really my field. But I'll do a rhetorical analysis of it, kind of talk about what I think Joe Biden and his speechwriters and the Biden administration are trying to accomplish with the speech. You know, it's not really a policy speech, but it could be a policy speech. It's also a epideictic speech. There's three kinds of speech that traditionally we think about, that we get from Aristotle. Deliberative speeches, which are about what are we going to do about the future. Forensic speeches, which are about the past, what happened, why does it matter? And then the third one, the epideictic, which is about the present and what are we praising, what are we celebrating, what are we blaming? And so these are the three kinds of discourse. And speeches aren't typically free of two of them just to be a third one. They have elements of all in there. We'll have to see what Biden does. I think it's going to be mostly a policy speech at the end of like, well, I'm going to call on Congress to blah, 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 blah. There might be a bunch of epideictic value arguments in there too about the debt ceiling and things like that. The things that they're looking forward as issues that they're going to have to take on, working with the a Congress that's just changed over. So this is Biden addressing a Republican Congress. And so it'll be interesting to see how his discourse changes and how he's going to approach that. I bet in the exordium and the narratio, he talks about unity and bipartisanship in his own record. Of course, Donald, come back by if you have something to share. Love to hear your opinion about it. Thanks for joining us. One of the weird things about State of the Union is evidence. A lot of times presidents will have a bunch of individual people in the gallery, and they'll point to them and talk about them as an example of either that's proof that there's this problem there or proof that our policies work or that the policy I'm proposing is going to work because of the existence of this person. So it's strange. It's a weird kind of testimony, even though those people don't say anything. They just wave and we clap for them. Or the people in the House chamber clap for them. But it's also kind of epideictic too. It's kind of a celebration of values. It's like, oh, these are our heroes. These are the people that we admire. These are people who are the people who are the exemplars, I guess is the word. Yeah, Donald. I think Donald's comment's a good one. Things are going quite well for the president. There's so many different ways that we can talk about that. One of the things I'm curious about is Biden going to talk about his policies that he's passed? The economic stimulus and that huge bill that he just passed. I forget what it's called, but is he going to tout his accomplishments and talk about how good it's been and that he wants to do more of those things in a bipartisan way in the future? Who's coming now?
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
All right, there we go. Getting off. I hope it's a good speech. I hope Donald's right. I hope it is a good speech. It always takes him so long to get the podium. So I'm sure you know the history. The State of the Union is constitutionally required. The president will, from time to time, update the Congress and the people on the State of the Union. What that means has evolved over time. Well, this is a good question about Kyle, too. I think we're going to see both, quite honestly. So, logical and emotional. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but here's what I would say in thinking about logical and emotional appeals. Logical appeals are going to be very evidence-based and very statistically based, I think. And I think that that doesn't fly too well when you have this kind of political, celebratory, civic moment. But there will be some of that. There will be some touting of the record. He's got to do that to say, here's what I've accomplished. To try to get attention back on his administration, I think would be a very, very good use of the speech. Emotional response, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I would probably say we're going to see 70-30 emotional to logical. But emotional can prove things. Emotional can prove things. We can feel a sense of unity. We can feel a sense that we're on the right direction. In the hands of a good orator, emotional response can be just as powerful as any statistic. And we kind of forget about that. The other thing is that he's got to think about the news cycle, too. Tomorrow, what are the clips they're going to show? They're not going to show him talking about some economic statistics about recovery. They might show that, but they're probably going to show a more heartfelt story or emotional appeal from him would be better as a 20 or 30-second clip on the news. So the speech will have this afterlife kind of chopped up into little segments that'll appear in the news cycle. Dan asks, will you do an analysis of the response to rebuttal speech? Sure, I'll hang out. Who's doing the Republican response? Do we know? Oh, also another thing about Kyle's question, who's the audience for this? That's a great question to think about. Rhetoricians think about that quite a bit. What is who's the audience? And one thing we could say the audience is the people in the chamber. And they are using it to respond in certain ways, to get on TV, to show their support, because it's a performance for them too. But also, this is the audience is us. The audience is us. I think this is going to be a much better stream if I close all these little applications I forget about. You guys do that? You forget about little applications? It takes the president forever to get the podium every time. But audience is one of the most important things to think about. Now, depending on the audience that you pick, you're going to come up with a different sensibility of this speech, a different feeling about it, depending on what you think the audience is. If you think he's talking to conservatives or Republicans, you might say it's a failure. If you think he's talking to Democrats, it might be a failure too. Or you might even say addressing that part of the audience and leaving another part out as a failure. Might do that. There's all kinds of different ways to think about it. All different approaches. Audience is everything in rhetoric. All right, let's see if I can get a good volume balance here. I think I'll control it from my soundboard. Might be the best way to do it.
Hello, hello, hello.
That's an interesting opening. Hello, hello, hello.
Thank you.
Very Matthew McConaughey.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and the distinct honor to present to you the President of the United States.
So like I said before, lots of theater, lots of performance, civic performance. It's part of what the speech is.
Speaker. Thank you. You can smile. It's okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, please. Mr. Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, good to see you guys up there. Members of Congress, by the way, Chief Justice, I may need a court order. She gets to go to the game tomorrow, next week. I have to stay home. Got to work something out here. Members of the Cabinet, leaders of our military, Chief Justice, Associate Justice, and retired Justice of the Supreme Court, and to you, my fellow Americans. You know, I start tonight by congratulating the 118th Congress and the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
Pretty interesting way to start. Kind of an olive branch there. And congratulating the new congressional members, pointing out it's a new Congress. It's probably going to come into play later.
Speaker, I don't want to ruin your reputation, but I look forward to working with you.
Good joke.
And I want to congratulate the new leader of the House Democrats, the first African-American minority leader in history, Hakeem Jeffries. He won in spite of the fact I campaigned for him. Congratulations to the longest-serving leader in the history of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell. Where are you, Mitch?
Oh, he won't even stand up and clap for himself.
And
Maybe he's not
to
feeling
Chuck
well.
Schumer, another term as Senate Minority Leader. I think you. Only this time you have a slightly bigger majority, Mr. Leader. You're the majority leader. About that much bigger? Yeah. Well, I tell you what. I want to give special recognition to someone who I think is going to be considered the greatest speaker in the history of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi.
So this is a really interesting start, just kind of focusing everything on the Congress, But I also don't think Biden is a very strong speaker when he goes off script. I think he's good if he stays focused on the script.
The story of America is a story of progress and resilience, of always moving forward, of never, ever giving up. It's a story unique among all nations. We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it. Look, folks, that's what we're doing again. 2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years because of you all, because of the American people.
So is it because of you all, because of American people? That's interesting. Because of Congress, because of support. Interesting way to tout the record.
And 2 years ago, COVID had shut down. Our businesses were closed. Our schools were robbed of so much. And today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threats in the Civil War. And today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
Oh, I didn't know I could do that. That's cool. Yeah, purple centrism. Interesting. Hey, Jaylon, welcome to the stream. Thanks for tuning in.
We're writing the next chapter in the great American story, a story of progress and resilience.
This is all traditional in the
When
ratio
world leaders
stuff.
ask me to define America, and they do, believe it or not, I can define it in one word, and I mean this: possibilities. We don't think anything is beyond our capacity. Everything is a possibility. You know, we're often told that Democrats and Republicans can't work together. But over the past 2 years, we've proved the cynics and naysayers wrong. Yes, we disagreed plenty. And yes, there were times when Democrats went alone. But time and again, Democrats and Republicans came together came together to defend a stronger and safer Europe. You came together to pass once in a generation infrastructure law, building bridges connecting our nation and our people. We came together to pass the most significant law ever, helping victims exposed to toxic burn pits. And in fact,
it's good that he's being specific about the things that he's accomplished, because those are things that are part of his record, but it's also good that he's saying, we did it, we did it, we did it. Repetition.
and in fact,
Put the focus on the
I've
Congress.
signed over 300 bipartisan pieces of legislation since becoming president, from reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, the Electoral Count Reform Act, the Respect for Marriage Act that protects the right to marry the person you love, and to my Republican friends, if we could work together the last Congress, there's no reason we can't work together and find consensus on important things in this Congress as well. I think.
Or maybe not. Not a great crowd reaction there.
Folks, you all are as formed as I am, but I think the people sent us a clear message. Fighting for the sake of fighting, power for the sake of power, conflict for the sake of conflict gets us nowhere. That's always been my vision of our country, and I know it's many of yours. To restore the soul of this nation, to rebuild the backbone of America, America's middle class, and to unite the country. We've been sent here to finish the job, in my view. For decades, the middle class has been hollowed out in not one administration, but for a long time. Too many good-paying manufacturing jobs move overseas.
I don't want to talk over him too much, but that backbone reference
cities and towns that many of you
goes all the way
represent
back to the
became
1800s.
shadows of what
Presidents
they
have
used
talked
to
about
be.
backbone.
Along the way, something
Politically,
else
it's so
we
weird.
lost. Pride.
Still with us.
Our sense of self-worth. I ran for president to fundamentally change things, to make sure our economy works for everyone, so we can all feel that pride in what we do. To build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down. Because when the middle class does well, the poor have a ladder up, and the wealthy still do very well. We all do well.
No, Bernie. Good to see Bernie.
I know a lot of you always kid me for always quoting my dad, but my dad used to say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck. He really would say this. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, honey, it's going to be okay, and mean it. Well, folks, so let's look at the results. We're not finished yet.
That was a
by any
weird
stretch of the
transition.
Imagination, but unemployment rate is at 3.4%, a 50-year low.
I feel like he gets confident, and then he kind of gets off the script a little bit and ad-libs, and then he comes back. It's kind of miss. Yeah, Kyle, I didn't expect the stats either.
Record unemployment for black and Hispanic workers.
But the way he did the
We've already
stats, I think, is
created,
important.
your help,
We did this, not me,
good-paying
not my
manufacturing
administration.
jobs, the fastest growth in 40 years.
So he's touting success of working together.
Where is it written that America can't lead the world in manufacturing? And I don't know where that's written. For too many decades, we imported projects and exported jobs. Now, thanks to what you've all done, we're exporting American products and creating American jobs. Folks, Inflation has been a global problem because the pandemic disrupted our supply chains, and Putin's unfair and brutal war in Ukraine disrupted energy supplies as well as food supplies, blocking all that grain in Ukraine. But we're better positioned than any country on earth right now. But we have more to do. But here at home, inflation is coming down.
You don't look too confident.
Here at home, gas prices are down $1.50 from their peak. Food inflation is coming down, not fast enough, but coming down. Inflation has fallen every month for the last 6 months, while take-home pay has gone up. Additionally, over the last 2 years, a record 10 million Americans applied to start new businesses. 10 million. And by the way,
I think this is all good information, kind of setting the scene, saying that this is all Horatio stuff. We haven't gotten to what we need to do in the future.
Small business is an act of hope.
But I feel like he needs to directly talk about
for leading that effort to ensure that small businesses have access to capital.
Well, that's good to
and
notice the
historic
vice
laws
president
we
there.
enacted that are going to
Talk
just
about
come
his
into
policies
being.
a little bit more, and the
Standing
connection
here
to the
last
policy
year,
might be nice there.
I shared with you a story of American genius and possibilities. Semiconductors, small computer chips the size of a fingerprint that power everything. From cell
J.D.
phones to
Vance is not
automobiles and
sure
so
what a
much more.
semiconductor is.
These chips were invented in America. Let's get that straight. They were invented in America.
Is that true?
We
I
used
think
to
that's
make
true.
40% of the world's chips.
Microprocessor? American
In the last
invention?
several decades, we lost our edge. We're down to only producing 10%. We all saw what happened during the pandemic when chip factories shut down overseas. Today's automobiles need 3,000 chips, each of those automobiles. But American automobiles couldn't make enough cars because there weren't enough chips. Car prices went up, people got laid off. So did everything from refrigerators to cell phones. We can never let that happen again. That's why we came together to pass the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act.
So it's interesting. He's kind of setting up in a ratio and saying, here was a big problem. We worked together and we overcame it. We had a bipartisan act that solved it.
I know I've been criticized for saying this, but I'm not changing my view.
It's a good
We're going to
theme.
make sure the supply chain for America begins in America. The supply chain begins in America. We've already created.
Not sure what that means, but it's a good line. That'll be on the news in the morning.
We've already created 800,000 new manufacturing jobs without this law, before the law kicks in. With this new law, we're going to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs across the country. And I mean all across the country, throughout not just the coast, but through the middle of the country as well. That's going to come from companies that have announced more than $300 billion in investment in American manufacturing over the next few years. Outside of Columbus, Ohio, Intel is building semiconductor factories on 1,000 acres, literally a field of dreams. It's going to create 10,000 jobs, that one investment, 7,000 construction jobs, 3,000 jobs in those factories once they're finished. They call them factories. Jobs paying an average of $130,000 a year, and many do not require a college degree. Jobs.
It's interesting why they choose not to clap and why they choose to clap.
Home to search for opportunity. It's
Very
just getting
intentional to make
started.
us think that there's something missing
Think
in the
about
argument.
the new homes, the small
Something
businesses,
wrong about what he's saying.
the medium-sized businesses. So much more that's going to be needed to support those 3,000 permanent jobs and the factories that are going to be built. Talk to mayors and governors, Democrats and Republicans, and they'll tell you what this means for their communities. We're seeing these field of dreams transform to the heartland. But to maintain the strongest economy in the world, we need the best infrastructure in the world. And folks, as you all know, we used to be #1 in the world in infrastructure. We've sunk to 13th in the world. The United States of America, 13th in the world in infrastructure, modern infrastructure. But now we're coming back because we came together and passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, the largest investment in infrastructure since President Eisenhower's interstate highway system.
It's a massive proposal, but it does kind of make sense to say we have to have the infrastructure system to have the strong economy, but why? That'll be something that connection is kind of emotional.
Projects that are going to put thousands of people to work rebuilding our highways, our bridges, our railroads, our tunnels, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet, all across America. Urban, rural, tribal. And folks, we're just getting started. We're just getting started.
This might be a sign we're coming to the end of the narratio.
I want to thank my Republican
The story
friends
so
who
far.
voted for the law, and my Republican friends who voted against it as well. But I still get asked to fund the projects in those districts as well. But don't worry, I promised I'd be a president for all Americans. will fund these projects. And I'll see you at the groundbreaking.
That's an interesting kind of dig at like McConnell and others
This law,
who didn't want to support that bill.
this law will further unite all of America. Projects like Brent Spence Bridge in Kentucky over the Ohio River, built 60 years ago, badly needed repairs, one of the nation's most congested freight routes, carrying $2 billion worth of freight every single day across the Ohio River. And folks, we've been talking about fixing it for decades, but we're really finally going to get it done. I went there last month with Democrats and Republicans and from both states to deliver a commitment of $1.6 billion for this project. And while I was there, I met a young woman named Sarah, who's here tonight. I don't know where Sarah is. Is she up in the box?
This is the first of the
Sarah, how are you?
living evidence
Well, Sarah, for 30
testimony,
years,
I guess. I don't know what to call this kind of proof.
For 30 years, I learned, she told me she'd been a proud member of the Iron Workers Local 44, known as the Cowboys in the Sky. The folks who built Cincinnati's skyline. Sarah said she can't wait to be 10 stories above the Ohio River building that new bridge. God bless her. That's pride. And that's what we're also building. We're building back pride. Look, we're also replacing poisonous lead pipes that go into 10 million homes in America, 400,000 school and child care centers. So every child in America can drink the water instead of having permanent damage to their brain. Look, we're making sure that every community in America has access to affordable high-speed internet. No parent should have to drive by McDonald's parking lot to help them do their homework online with their kids, which many thousands were doing across the country. And when we do these projects, and again, I get criticized for this, but I make no excuses for it, we're going to buy American. We're going to buy America. Folks,
It's like such a softball. Like, I get criticized for this, but I'm just going to buy American products. I mean,
it's
this.
totally consistent with international trade rules.
Kind of a
Buy
softball.
America has been the law since 1933, but for too long, past administrations, Democrat and Republican, have not anymore. Tonight,
Yeah,
I'm
little hiccup
announcing
there.
new standards that require all construction materials used in federal infrastructure projects to be made in America.
That's the
Made in
first of the
America.
policies, I'd say. Pretty good.
I mean it. Lumber, glass, drywall, fiber optic cable. And on my watch, American roads, bridges, and American highways are going to be made with American products as well. Folks, my economic plan is about investing in places and people that have been forgotten. So many of you listening to me tonight, I know you feel it. So many of you felt like you've just simply been forgotten. Amid the economic upheaval of the past 4 decades, too many people have been left behind.
Professor
You know,
Lavery's joining us.
Maybe that's you watching from home.
Oh, I
Remember the
think
jobs
Matt,
that
you
went away.
clicked
You
the
remember them,
link
don't
to
you?
join in as a
Folks at home
commentator.
remember them. You wonder whether the
If you just
path
wanna
even
watch it,
exists anymore for
you
your
clicked the wrong
children to
link.
get ahead without having to move away.
But let me know if you want to join as a
Well, that's
commentator.
why
Love to hear what you
I
think.
get that. That's why we're building an economy where no one's left behind. Jobs are coming back. Pride is coming back because choices we made in the last several years. You know, this is, in my view, a blue-collar blueprint to rebuild America and make a real difference in your lives at home. For example, too many of you lay in bed at night like my dad did, staring at the ceiling, wondering what in God's name happens if your spouse gets cancer, or your child gets deadly ill, or something happens to you. What are you going to get money to pay for those medical bills? or you're going to have to sell the house or try to get a second mortgage on it. I get it. I get it. With the Inflation Reduction Act that I signed into law, we're taking on powerful interest to bring health care costs down so you can sleep better at night with more security. You know, we pay more for prescription drugs than any nation in the world. Let me say it again.
It's almost a trope. We hear that in every
prescription
speech.
drugs than any major nation on earth. For example, 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. Many of you in this chamber do, and in the audience. But every day, millions need insulin to control their diabetes so they can literally stay alive. Insulin's been around for over 100 years.
Insulin is a very good example of this.
He wanted to be available for everyone. It cost the drug companies roughly $10 a vial to make that insulin.
Is it like a really good argument because it deals with this idea of like vile profiteering? Like,
but Big Pharma has been unfairly charging people hundreds
just an example
of dollars,
of capitalist
$400 to
excess that
$500
everyone
a month,
can kind of get behind.
making record profits. Not anymore. Not anymore. So many things that we did are only now coming to fruition. We said we were doing this, and we said we passed the law to do it, but people didn't know because the law didn't take effect until January 1 of this year. We capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors on Medicare.
It's a very limited cap, but still an accomplishment that he wants to
People are just finding out.
point out.
I'm sure you're getting the same calls I'm getting. Look,
One of the interesting
there are
things about the
millions of other
speech is,
Americans
can he really get all his policy
who
success
are not
ahead of all the
Medicare,
conversation about
including
his
200,000 young
age,
people
how
with type
kind of
1
doddering
diabetes
he is,
need this insulin to stay
how he kind
alive.
of seems checked out. A lot of people like to point out that.
He's
He's doing a pretty good job as long as he stays on script here, showing he's on top of it. But he really does need to bring up all the policies that he led. That's a fine line to walk. He doesn't want to say, my administration, I did this, we did this, meaning Democrats. He's like, Congress. These are all bipartisan successes.
Very well.
And that's the image, that's kind of the theme he's going for the future.
Caps and won't even go into effect until 2025. It costs out-of-pocket drug costs for seniors on Medicare at a maximum of $2,000 a year. You don't have to pay more than $2,000 a year, no matter how much your drug costs are. Because you know why? You all know it. Many of you, like many in my family, have cancer. You know the drugs can range from $10,000, $11,000, $14,000, $15,000 for the cancer drugs. If drug prices rise faster than inflation, drug companies are going to have to pay Medicare back the difference. We're finally giving Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices. Bringing down prescription drug costs doesn't just save seniors money, it cuts the federal deficit by billions of dollars.
I think that's an argument that should be made
billions of dollars.
in a more complex way. I wonder if people will pick that up in the media and commentary.
Purchased by Medicare to keep their commitment to the seniors. Well, guess what? Instead of paying $400 or $500 a month, you're paying $15. That's a lot of savings for the federal government. And by the way, why wouldn't we want that? Now, some members here are threatening, and I know it's not an official party position, so I'm going to exaggerate, but threatening to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. As my coach, that's okay. That's fair.
Yeah, I like the I like when they interact
Football
with the
coach
audience.
used to say, lots of luck in your senior year. Make no mistake.
Very folksy.
If you try anything to raise the cost of prescription jobs, I will veto it. Look, I'm pleased to say that more Americans have health insurance now than ever in history. A record 16 million people are enrolled in the Affordable Care Act. And thanks Thanks to the law I signed last year,
There you go. Some
saving
responsibility.
millions are saving $800 a year on their premiums. And by the way, that law was written and the benefit expires in 2025. So my plea to some of you, at least in this audience, let's finish the job and make these savings permanent. Expand coverage of Medicaid.
So these are the policy demand parts. I think it would be nice to hear a stronger partitio.
The Inflation Reduction Act is also the most significant investment ever.
I mean, a stronger way, like how I, Joe Biden, envision this going forward, instead of let's finish the job or guess what.
Creating American jobs, leading the world to a clean energy future. I visited the devastating aftermath of record floods, droughts, storms, and wildfires from Arizona,
A little bit of a
Mexico,
stronger turn
all
of the
way
boat.
up to the Canadian border. More timber has been burned, that I've observed from helicopters, than the entire state of Missouri. And we don't have global warming? Not a problem. In addition to emergency recovery, from Puerto Rico to Florida to Idaho, we're rebuilding.
I forget what the research says, but saying Missouri like that has some kind of there's some kind of reason behind it.
Prevent those forest
Instead of
fires.
Missouri.
Roads and
It's like
water
what kind of
systems
audience you're
stand
trying to
the
get
next big flood.
pronunciation,
Clean energy to
sounding like you're
pollution,
from
create
somewhere.
jobs and communities
Very
often left
important.
behind.
especially for
We're gonna
East
build
Coasters.
500,000 electric vehicle charging stations installed across the country by tens of thousands of IBEW workers. And we're helping families save more than $1,000 a year with tax credits.
I think a problem with these speeches that I think is you got to have that
Appliances,
call,
energy-efficient appliances,
that discussion of the evidence,
historic
and then the
conservation
return.
efforts to be responsible
Like
stewards
he
of
said
our
some
land.
good stuff about we're not
Let's
just
face
creating
reality.
jobs, we're creating pride,
Climate crisis doesn't
we're
care
saving
if you're
money,
in a red
we're
or blue
reducing
state.
federal expense.
It's an existential threat.
It's like when he talks about the EV
We have
things,
an
it's like
obligation,
we had
not
this
to ourselves,
need,
but to our children and grandchildren to
we
confront
installed
it.
these things, good jobs,
proud of
instilling
how
pride,
America
reducing federal
at last is
expense.
stepping up to the challenge.
That's what I want. That's
We're
what we
still gonna
stand
need oil
for.
and gas for a
Together as in a
guess
bipartisan way.
while. No, we do.
But I like the cadence. It's like these
there's
speeches
so
get kind of
much
bogged
more
down
to
with
do.
data, with a lot of facts. You can't remember
We got to
everything.
finish the job. And we pay for these investments in our future by finally making the wealthiest and biggest corporations begin to pay their fair share.
I'm tired of finish the job, and I'm tired of folks. This kind of stuff is kind of like, I just don't think it works. Maybe with a particular demographic it works,
Look,
but
I'm a
it doesn't really work.
capitalist. I'm a capitalist, but pay your fair share. I think a lot of you at home agree with me and many people that you know. The tax system is not fair. It is not fair.
I didn't think Kamala was going to clap for that.
The idea that in 2020, 55 of the largest corporations in America, the Fortune 500, made $40 billion in profits and paid zero in federal taxes? Zero? Folks, it's simply not fair. But now, because of the law I signed, billion-dollar companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. God love them. 15%. That's less than a nurse pays. And I need to be crystal clear. I said at the very beginning, under my plans, as long as I'm president,
Yeah, she really
nobody
is,
less than
Foster. Welcome to the stream,
$400,000
Foster.
will pay an additional penny in taxes. Nobody, not one penny.
See, the failure of this kind of tax
Let's finish the
discourse
job. There's more
for
to
Democrats,
do.
there's finish the job again. I should have kept a tally. I don't like finish the job. It's not a good slogan.
Pass my proposal for the billionaire minimum
I think it's
tax.
rebuilding pride
You know,
through jobs
There's 1,000
and reducing
billionaires in
federal
America. It's up from
expense
about
is like what he
600
should
at the
say.
beginning of the term.
I think that's
No
like that's what he
billionaire
said a lot of
should be
times, but it
paying a
should.
lower tax
That
rate
should be
than
the
a school
cadence.
teacher or firefighter.
But the problem I was saying about this tax discourse, the reason the tax discourse always goes so bad, is because he's talking about taxes as punitive and unfair. And the thing is, if you benefit from the free market capitalist angle of the United States, then you should pay to help maintain it.
Have you noticed Big Oil just reported?
That's
its
what taxes do, is they make
record
that
profits.
free market possible.
Last year they made $2
You wouldn't try to sneak
billion
into a concert or a
in the midst
professional
of a
football
global energy
game.
crisis.
Maybe you would. But would you do it if you made $40 billion? Would you try to sneak in, or would you buy your ticket?
Increase domestic production.
I mean, that's what I think you should do. But I mean, the tax discourse is always punitive because I think Americans think of taxes as purely punitive. I don't think anybody, I think it's a hard boat to row. It's rowing upstream. Boy, I got my metaphors mixed up. It's a hard road to hoe to try to talk about taxes as anything but punitive to be avoided.
If they had in fact invested in the production to keep gas prices down, instead they used the record profits to buy back their own stock.
Yeah.
Rewarding the CEOs and shareholders. Corporations ought to do the right thing. That's why I propose we quadruple the tax on corporate stock buybacks and encourage long-term investment.
See, and there we go. Now he's just talking about taxes as something that's, he's going to use it as a punishment, a punitive thing. If they don't do the right thing, we're going to quadruple tax them. I think that discourse makes people think of taxes as punishment. I think this is a rhetoric that only has a dark, bad ending. I don't think this is the way that you should talk about it as the president. But then again, most people believe this, and it's hard to get them to think about taxes another way. Joe seems stunned. He doesn't know what's going on. Not that Joe, the Joe they just showed.
My administration has cut the deficit by more than $1.7 trillion. The largest deficit reduction in American history. Under the previous administration, the American deficit went up 4 years in a row. Because those record deficits, no president added more to the national debt in any 4 years than my predecessor. Nearly 25% of the entire national debt
McCarthy doesn't like that.
Took over 200 years to accumulate was added by just one administration alone, the last one. They're the facts. Check it out.
Well, you see, the problem with this stuff is, what does it mean, deficit reduction? What does it mean?
How did Congress respond to that debt?
Like, this is like talking in percentages.
They lifted the debt ceiling 3 times without preconditions or crisis. They paid American bills to prevent...
Yeah, what you smelling, Yellen?
So tonight I'm asking the Congress to follow suit.
Yeah, McCarthy is like disagreeing. But you see, that's the thing, is when you offer this kind of stuff, it sounds good, but the devil is in the details. What do you mean by deficit increase? What do you mean by the largest? Largest percentage? Largest in dollars adjusted for inflation? I mean, this is like why people have such hermeneutics of skepticism about this speech, because they speak in such general terms.
Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority.
No, they know. They don't want that.
Contact my office. I'll give you a copy. Of the
Wow, look at Green's coat. That's styling.
That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad
That's a great coat.
No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you.
Now, I think this is a mistake, because I think what he's doing is taking campaign trail rhetoric
the idea is
and thinking about it as a proposal from the caucus. I don't think it's going to get anywhere.
Moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks,
yeah, I feel like Biden has way too much confidence off script, and he just doesn't realize how bad he looks when he's off script.
As we all apparently agree.
He starts talking, he starts feeling the vibe. He's like, yeah, I got this. And then he starts getting folksy and adding stuff. And, you know, then he loses the thread. He starts saying, guess what? And quoting his football coach and saying, let's finish the job.
Social Security and Medicare are a lifeline for millions of seniors. Americans have to pay into them from the very first paycheck they started.
Popcorn,
tonight,
welcome. Great comment.
Let's all agree, and we apparently are. Let's stand up for seniors.
Popcorn joining us from YouTube. I'm using restream.io. Easy way to stream to all of your social media sites. We have viewers from LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook tonight. But I thought Popcorn is good. I think we have to build on the garbage. I think I'm going to take a very Buckminster or Fuller approach and say this industrial waste can provide us a house and a car here, rhetorically.
And if anyone tries to
That's my faith anyway. We'll see.
I'll stop them. I'll veto it. And look, I'm not going to allow them to be taken away. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. But
You know, this like demand, I'll veto it if it's not as powerful. Like I like George W. Bush's State of the Union, his old chestnut of, and if you send that bill to the desk, give me the pin. Like being more affirmative of what he's going to support, what he's going to sign. You know, let's play around with that. I think Joe Biden would be a very difficult person to work with as a speechwriter because I think he wants to talk the language of Congress and the Senate.
I can tell you.
And you can see that, I think, in places where he's talking directly to some of the back channel, backroom conversations of the caucus. I don't know if it plays too well with us.
We're going to extend the Medicare Trust Fund at least 2 decades because that's going to be the next argument. How do we keep it solvent, right? Well, we'll not raise tax on anyone making under 400 grand, but we'll pay for it the way we talked about tonight by making sure that the wealthy and big corporations pay their fair share. Look. Here's the deal.
Yeah, this is exactly right. I'm going to put popcorn back up here. Actually, I'll put the whole chat up here, and then everybody's comments can be seen by everybody.
American consumer. Here's my message to all of you out there. I have your back.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was talking about at the beginning, is that one of the strategies, because Kyle from LinkedIn was asking about, do you think that, do you think he's going to, who's the audience for this? Is he going to go for the, and I was like, part of the strategy of this is to make the news clips for the morning shows easy. So you want those big emotional bursts and those nice cadences. And you need a certain number of those. Like if this goes for an hour and a half, you need about 20 or 30 of those for them to choose from for the 6 a.m. to noon news cycle. And then you can do all the other political comments will be out by then, and you can run other ones. So I think that that's one of the goals of a speech like this is, but Biden is not interested in making these cadences. He keeps saying, let's finish the job and folks, and it's not working.
I signed a bipartisan bill to cut shipping costs by 90%, helping American farmers, businessmen, and consumers. Let's finish the job. Pass the bipartisan legislation to strengthen antitrust enforcement.
You guys like this setup? Does this look good? I like it so everyone can see everybody's comments. Please comment in the chat. Don't hold back. Anything you're thinking. I kind of like to get a conversation going, you know.
My administration is
I think McCarthy's falling asleep. It's on California time.
Hidden surcharges, too many
or maybe not. Maybe it needs to be on California time.
For example, we're making airlines show you the full ticket price up front. Refund your money if your flight is canceled or delayed. We've reduced exorbitant bank overdrafts by saving consumers more than $1 billion a year. We're cutting credit card late fees by 75% from $30 to $8.
See, I think it's all good, but I think you should have, again, indicated this is a bipartisan effort. I think the thing is you want the greater wave behind I'm the bipartisan president. This Republican victory is not a big deal at all. It's not unusual. It's not an interruption. This is what we're used to. This is the success of my administration is built on this. I think that cadence needs to keep coming back.
When a company overcharges you and gets away with it.
It's a huge victory. Popcorn, yes.
We've written a bill to stop it all. It's called the Junk Fee Prevention Act. We're going to ban surprise resort fees that hotels charge on your bill. Those fees can cost you up to $90 a night at hotels.
Is this really like worth talking about?
Resorts.
The resort taxing fee?
The idea.
I mean, it's one of these things where you pick a really extreme, crazy, small example, and then you try to get indignation from the audience. Like, can you believe this? Well, we're wiping that out with federal law, this horrible one. But it's probably like this one little tiny thing that just seems really horrible. Terrible.
And will prohibit airlines from charging $50 round trip for family just to be able to sit together. Baggage fees are bad enough. Airlines can't treat your child like
somebody
a piece
didn't
of
use that
baggage.
seat.
Americans are tired of being. We're tired of being played for suckers. So pass.
Yeah, it's easy pickings, you know.
So companies stop ripping us off. For too long, workers have been getting stiffed, but not anymore. We're beginning to restore the dignity of work. For example,
see, this dignity of work point is too late since we've heard that.
Until 2 years ago. 30
Why didn't he
million
make the
workers
dignity argument on the
have to sign
hotel resort
non-compete
fee and the
agreements
airline stuff? That would have been
for
good
the
too.
jobs they
American
create.
dignity.
30 million.
You work hard for that
cashier
money and the airline won't
at a
even show
burger
you your
place
ticket price?
Can't walk across
Where's the
town
dignity?
and take the same job at another burger place and make a few bucks more. It just changed. But they just changed it because we exposed it. That was part of the deal, guys. Look it up. But not anymore. We're banning those agreements so companies have to compete for workers and pay them what they're worth.
I'm kind of excited to see that we're kind of moving back to this 19th century kind of attitude in the Congress with a lot of heckling.
And I must tell you,
We don't want to go back to the full 19th century with the gunplay and the
this is bound to get a
spittoons
response
and the
from my
knife fights
friends
and all this.
on my left but the right. I'm so sick
Well, this is a
and
good
tired of
point from
companies
Kyle.
breaking the law by preventing workers from
You guys can all
organizing.
see that on the chat, yeah?
That's the PRO Act.
He doesn't have a good name. Yeah, these acts it's kind of becoming kind of a mush in my mind. I can't keep track of all the acts. But that's why I think, again, you have to have that cadence of like, we're going to have,
Parents can afford to raise a family with sick days.
we need to have,
Family medical leave.
sorry, popcorn, Bloody Kansas AI edition. I think during the Republican response, I'm going to ask Chat GPT to talk about the history of AI Bloody Kansas. But yeah, back to Kyle's point. If you have bad policy names, you can name the policy, but the problem is the framing and then the response as a cadence. Everything has to be a capsule. Like medical capsules, pills are easy to swallow. All the medicine is mixed up in there, has crazy chemical names, but it's in this little capsule that's blue or white and red, and you swallow it. Everything comes. So that's the thing about saying dignity, federal spending reduction, making our economy great. Then you talk about the thing, you're like, once again, and it'll be made with jobs that bring dignity. These policies will bring dignity. Hey, Kara, welcome to the stream. Thank you. I'm glad I'm better than NBC's coverage. Thank you. I mean, I did, it's because I have this great seat here in the Congress.
Restoring the dignity of work means making
Yes.
education an affordable ticket to the middle class.
Yes, Neo.
You know, when we made public education 12 years
Or do you mean the
ago
blue pill?
universal
I'm assuming you
in
mean the
last
Matrix,
century,
becoming Dr. Mario.
we made the best educated, best paid, we became the best educated, best paid nation in the world. But the rest of the world's caught up.
Uh-oh.
It's caught up.
Student loans?
Jill, my
Anybody?
wife, who teaches full time, has an expression. I hope I get it right, kid. Any nation that out-educates us is going to outcompete us. Any nation that out-educates is going to
Well, that's not hard to
outcompete
get
us.
right. That's kind of like,
We all know
is
12
that like a
years of
special
education
phrase of hers?
is
Like,
not enough to win the economic competition of 21st century.
I thought it was going to be something a little bit more private, and that sounds like something from like Harvard Business Review. That doesn't sound like something that like you'd sit at the dinner table and talk about.
For 3 and 4 years old, studies show that children who go to preschool are
I think as a rhetorical guideline, if you're going to talk about something your wife said that you thought was pretty good, it should be better than something you get out of Harvard Business Review.
They came from. Let's give public school teachers a raise.
But I mean, this is also easy pickings too, because the federal government in most states is 2-3% of education. So this is also stuff to kind of get a big reaction. Just fool me twice a moment.
Increasing Pell Grants for working and middle-class families. Let's finish the job.
I think this finish the
Connect
job
students
thing
to
is
career
fool me twice a moment. The
opportunities
finish the
starting in
job
high
thing is kind of
Provide
annoying me at this
access to
point.
2 years of community college. The best career training in America, in addition to being a pathway to a 4-year degree.
I mean, it's just too easy to flip, you know? If you're a Republican, if you're in the mainstream of the caucus or even on the edge, you can just say, yeah, let's finish the job. Let's roll back all these harmful Obama-Biden
In
policies.
the midst of the COVID crisis, when schools were closed
Easy.
and we were shutting down everything.
Was it A/B tested?
Let's recognize
Really?
how far
Oh,
we
man.
came in the fight against the pandemic
Terrible.
itself. While the virus is not gone, thanks to the resilience of the American people and the ingenuity of medicine, we've broken the COVID grip on us. COVID deaths are down by 90%. We've saved millions of lives and opened up our country. We opened our country back up.
See, another thing is a
Soon
COVID
we'll
death
end
isn't
the
that
public
simple
health
either.
Emergency. But that's called a public health emergency. But we'll remember the toll and pain that's never going to go away. More than 1 million Americans lost their lives to COVID. 1 million. Families grieving, children orphaned. Empty chairs at the dining room table constantly reminding you
Good comment, Popcorn.
that she used to sit there. Remembering them.
This empty chair
remain vigilant.
trope is
We still
like
need
it had
to
about a
monitor
shelf
dozens
life
of
of like
variants
2
that
weeks, I
support new
think.
vaccines and treatments. So Congress needs
Why
to
are
fund
we
these
hearing
efforts
this
to
again
keep
now? There
America
needs to be a
safe,
new one too. I mean, he needs to be
And as
talking
we
about
emerge
public
from this
health as the
crisis-
focus of Congress.
stronger. We're also got to double down on prosecuting criminals who stole relief money meant to keep workers and small businesses afloat.
Oh, Merrick, better write that down. That'll be Monday's meeting there. Oh, you want me to do what, boss? Oh, okay.
Before I came to office, you remember, during that campaign, the big issue was about inspector generals who would protect taxpayers' dollars who were sidelined.
I don't know if that was
They
the
were
big
fired.
issue. It's not what I
Many people
remember
said we
it
don't
being.
need them. And fraud became
Why didn't he
rampant.
talk about public health as
Last
something
year,
that
I told you
needs
the
to always
watchdogs
be
were
on the
back.
mind and always
Since
be
then,
being
we've recovered
thought about
billions
in
of
terms
taxpayers'
of
dollars.
why we're
Now
moving
let's
forward with this
triple the
economy or
anti-fraud
why we have to
strike
move
force
forward
going
with
after
these things.
these
That seemed like a
criminals,
missed opportunity
double
to
the
me.
statute of limitations on these crimes, and crack down on identity fraud by criminal syndicates stealing billions of dollars from the American people. And the data shows
I don't know if these are really
for every dollar we
controversies.
put into fighting fraud, the taxpayers get back at least 10 times as much. It matters. It matters. Look, COVID left its scars, like the spike in violent crime in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. We have an obligation to make sure all people are safe. Public safety depends on public trust, as all of us know. But too often that trust is violated. Joining us tonight are the parents of Tyree Nichols. Welcome.
That's super sad. I mean, again, powerful evidence. This powerful evidence. It's almost like, you know, you bring the people in front of the eyes of the judges, you
Many
know.
of you personally know.
They don't even
There's
have to
no
say
words to
anything.
describe the
Just a
heartache and
presence.
grief of losing a child. But imagine.
Yeah, powerful.
Imagine if you lost that child at the hands of the law. Imagine having to worry whether your son or daughter came home from walking down the street, playing in the park, or just driving a car. Most of us in here have never had to have the talk that brown and black parents have had to have with their children.
This is
Bo,
pretty
Hunter,
risky stuff.
Ashton, my children, I never had to have the talk with them.
Which gesture
I
do you
never
mean,
had to tell them
Popcorn?
if a police officer pulls you over, turn your interior lights on right away.
Like do you mean the
Don't reach for
commonplace
your
of
license. Keep your hands on the
we don't
steering
have to
wheel.
worry about our children coming home because we're white?
Imagine
or-
having to worry like that every single time your kid got in a car. Here's what Tyree.
I mean, I wonder about the physical body presence thing. Would it be better to talk about them, mention them, even if they're not there? Oh, yeah. So the physical bodies are powerful moments, I think, though. But it does kind of get to be,
And something good will come of this.
you get a random collection. This one is actually, I
Imagine
think,
how
pretty
much
good.
courage
A
and
pretty
clarity
good
that
turn in the
takes.
speech,
It's up to us.
but maybe a little late.
All of us. We all want the same thing. Neighborhoods free of violence. Law enforcement who earns the community's trust. Just as every cop, when they pin on that badge in the morning, has a right to be able to go home at night, so does everybody
Oh, that
else
is
out
interesting, Kyle. Yeah, they've been watching this whole
there.
thing.
Our children have a right to come home safely.
It's hard, you know. You have to show the administration's accomplishments,
Protection
and you
under
have
the
to
law, the covenant we have with
detail
each other in
those.
America.
And you have to make that part of the narrative of where we're going, what I'm asking you to do, and what I'm trying to prove the future should look like. What are we going to do with this thing?
Put their lives on the line every single night and day.
And it got kind of
And we know we ask them in many
wonky,
cases
inspector
to do too much
generals
to be
and
counselors,
resort
social
taxes
workers,
and things. So
psychologists,
this is a good
responding
turn
to
for the third
drug
act here,
overdoses,
I guess.
mental health
I
crises,
don't want to
and
think
so
about
much
it maybe
more.
like that.
In one sense, we ask much too much of them. I know most cops and their families are good, decent, honorable people, the vast majority. But they risk.
It's easy to praise Athens in front of Athenians. Room full of cops.
And they risk their lives every time they put that shield on. But what happened to Tyree in Memphis happens too often. We have to do better.
Wouldn't it be better to
Give
say
law enforcement the
it doesn't
real
matter how
training they
one
need.
any time it happens, it's too many
Hold them
times.
to higher
That'd be more powerful, I
standards.
think.
Help them succeed in keeping us safe. We also need more first responders and professionals to address the growing mental
like how
health,
stoic they
substance
are.
abuse challenges. More resources, reduce
I think that
violent
helps
crime and
Biden.
gun crime. More community intervention programs.
They're kind of sitting there like the Supreme
More
Court, no
investment in
reaction,
housing,
no clapping.
education, and job training.
Like it actually helps him in a way because it's like none of these policies are going to
To
help
prevent violence in the first place.
those folks get their
Police
kid back, right?
officers or police departments violate the public trust, they must be held accountable. With the support of the families of victims, civil rights groups, and law enforcement, I signed an executive order for all federal officers banning chokeholds, restricting no-knock warrants, and other key elements of the George Floyd Act. Let's commit ourselves to make the words of Tyler's mom true. Something good must come from this. Something good.
So clap for their own words. That's good.
And all of us.
I think that they're good. That's a good use of their presence in terms of evidence or proof. This is more of proof, like their physical presence and their lack of emotional reaction until that. I think really helps Biden there.
Folks, it's difficult, but it's simple. All of us in the chamber.
Like bringing them there is like
We
bringing the
need
body
to rise to this
of
moment.
Tyree in there.
We can't turn away. Let's do what we know in our hearts that we need to do. Let's come together to finish the job on police reform. Do something. Do something. That was the plea of parents who lost their children in Uvalde. I met with every one of them. Do something about gun violence. Thank God. Thank God we did. Passing the most sweeping gun safety law in 3 decades. That includes things like that the majority of responsible gun owners already support. Enhanced background checks for 18 to 21 years old. Red flag laws, keeping guns out of the hands of people.
Seems
who are
like the
dangerous
strategy is to
themselves
say,
and others. But we know our work
here was
is
the
not
problem.
done.
We passed this
Joining us
legislation.
tonight is Brandon
That
Say,
legislation
a 26-year-old hero. Brandon
was
took
already,
his college dreams
it
on
was
hold
the most
because his
unprecedented,
mom
but it was
saw
already an agreement by the people who were most likely to hate it.
cancer.
It has these 3 features, and then we move on. But let's finish the job and do more.
Brandon,
That seems to be the strategy here. I don't like it. It doesn't have a cadence, like I keep saying. It doesn't have a kind of a melodic turn. I think you need that for memory, to get people to feel like, what do you feel Joe Biden's administration is about? It's about a lot of figures and just tons of different policies about weird things like resort taxes and inspector generals and this and that. And you're not really getting a sense of how these things are all interconnected in a vision. I think that's what he needs to do, is offer that vision. And that comes through cadence, through the repetition of value terms that he established early on, and now he's not really using them. It's a little frustrating.
11 people in another dance studio. 11. He saved lives. It's time we do the same. Ban assault weapons now. Ban them now. Once and for all.
Yeah, they better not cloud with Bono's there. Wow.
I led the fight to do that in 1994.
Can you imagine sitting next to Bono
10 years.
up there? That's wild.
Law, mass shootings went down after we let it expire in the Republican administration.
I wrestled an
Mass
automatic
shootings
weapon
tripled.
away from a
Let's
shooter.
finish the
It's like,
job
I'm Bono.
and ban these
Nice to meet
assault
you.
weapons. And let's also come together on immigration. Make it a bipartisan
What a weird
issue once again.
transition. You know, while we're banning assault weapons, since we're already here, let's just do some immigration. That's a weird transition.
We now have a record number of personnel working to secure
It's like
the
laundry
border.
list. I don't really like the
Arresting
laundry list.
8,000 human
Not a
smugglers.
fan.
Seizing over 23,000 pounds of fentanyl in just the last several months. We've launched a new border plan last month. Unlawful migration from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela has come down 97% as a consequence of that. But American border problems won't be fixed until Congress acts. If we don't pass my comprehensive immigration reform, at least pass my plan to provide the equipment and officers to secure the border.
Yeah, that's weird. I agree with Ted.
For dreamers, those on temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Here in the People's House, it's our duty to protect all the people's rights and freedoms.
Now, you see, that's way too late.
Congress must
Why didn't
restore
that?
the right and
That would have been a great transition. That would have been a great transition to before the police violence stuff.
Roe v. Wade.
What were they shouting? Did anybody make that out?
Give every woman a consular right.
McCarthy didn't call order. He just shushed them.
Doing everything.
He doesn't have any power anyway.
Protect access to reproductive health care and safeguard patient safety.
He's happy to be the speaker, but I don't think he has the power to be like, you be quiet.
Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it. But let's also pass the Bipartisan Equality Act to ensure LGBTQ Americans, especially transgender young people, can live with safety and dignity. Our strength is
This is
not
a nice
just
yellow
the
dress.
example of our power,
that.
but the power of our example. Let's remember the world's watching. I spoke in this chamber 1 year ago, just days after Vladimir Putin unleashed his brutal attack against Ukraine. A murderous assault, evoking images of death and destruction Europe suffered in World War II. Putin's invasion has been a test for the ages, test for America.
See, again, it's like a shopping list. LBGTQ gets like a kind of a mention.
Would we stand for sovereignty? We stand
Roe
for
v.
the
Wade
right of people to
Dobbs,
live free
kind of a
and tyranny?
mention. Maybe there's not much to say
Will
about
we
that, but I think
stand for the
connecting that to
defense
the
of
people's
democracy?
house and the protecting of all people.
Such defense matters to us because it keeps peace and prevents open season on would-be aggressors.
Protecting all rights,
Our
protecting all
prosperity.
people. That would have been a nicer way to put that together. And then you can transition to the international way
We know the answer.
that we protect people.
Yes, we would, and we did. We did.
Somebody's got the cane there. Wow.
Together.
Throwback.
We did what America always does at our best.
Watch out,
We
Charles
led.
Sumner.
We united NATO.
There's a cane in the
We built a
house.
global coalition. We stood against Putin's aggression. We stood with the Ukrainian people. Tonight, we're once again joined by Ukrainian's ambassador to the United States. She represents not just her nation, but the courage of her people. Our ambassador is here, united. We're united in our support of your country. Will you stand so we can all take a look at you?
Very strange. I guess he couldn't say her name, maybe.
Thank you.
Flubbed it on the name. It was a weird introduction. But not such a big deal, I don't think.
Because we're going to stand with you as long as it takes.
The guy next to her looks like that actor from Law and Order.
Our nation is working for more
Sam
freedom, more dignity, more peace, not
Waterston,
just in Europe, but everywhere.
who played the DA on Law and Order for
Before
years. Looks
I
like
came
him.
to office, the story was about how the People's Republic of China was increasing its power, and America was failing in the world.
I don't remember
Not
the Law and Order
anymore.
guy's name.
We made clear, and I made clear in my personal conversations, which have been many, with President Xi, that we seek competition, not conflict. But I will make no apologies that we're investing to make America stronger, investing in American innovation and industries that will define the future that China intends to be dominating, investing in our alliances and working with our allies to protect advanced technologies so they will not be used against us, modernizing our military to safeguard stability and deter aggression. Today, we're in the strongest position in decades to compete with China or anyone else in the world. Anyone else in the world. And I'm committed.
The Stoic generals.
I'm committed to work with China where we can advance American interests and benefit the world. But make no
Yeah,
mistake
Kyle, it
about
didn't make any sense to me. I think he
As
had
we made
all of the
clear
good
last week,
framing
if
was
China
at the end
threatens
of
our
those
sovereignty,
points.
We will act to protect our country, and we did.
Like, it's a nice transition to go from economic dignity to social dignity, and then say, It was a year ago that I addressed this body when the murderous tyrant Vladimir Putin attacked Ukraine, murdering his people. And we were reminded that this house is the people's house. All of the people. The United States is committed to protecting human dignity and human rights.
Name me one.
Wow, he's angry.
America's rallying the world to meet those challenges, from climate to global health to food insecurity to
What's that
terrorism,
performance about?
to territorial aggression. Allies are stepping up, spending more, and doing more. Look, the bridges we're forming between partners in the Pacific and those in the Atlantic, and those who bet against America are learning how wrong they are. It's never, ever been a good bet to bet against America. Never.
That'll be on the news. That's a good clip. Good little. Yeah, I think maybe, Kyle, maybe another way to think about it is he just was like, if you guys go for abortion rights from Congress, I'll just veto it. They know they won't be able to pass it, so maybe that's all he needed to say. But I think he missed a moment to talk about the importance of protecting all Americans' rights, even people you disagree with. That's what bipartisanship is. That's what dignity is.
That's why a year ago,
That's what running a good federal government is compromise and dignity and working together.
Making it easy for doctors to prescribe effective treatments for opioid addiction. We passed the gun safety law, making historic investments in mental health.
Oh, liar. That's also a trope. That was already, that could be done once and be effective, and that was done in Obama.
So much more.
In Obama's State of the Union.
We passed.
But I don't think you can do that anymore. I think it's everyone's like, oh God. I think it's played out.
Toxic burn kits I shared here last year.
Like repetition of these shocking moments is always at about 14% of what the original was, and then it's at 0 the next time. So that's probably like Bobert or somebody uncreative.
But there's so much more to do.
Or Green,
we can do
maybe.
It together. Joining us tonight is a father named Doug from Newton, New Hampshire. He wrote Jill, my wife, a letter, and me as well, about his courageous daughter, Courtney. A contagious laugh, his sister's best friend, her sister's best friend. He shared a story all too familiar to millions of Americans and many of you in the audience. Courtney discovered pills in high school. It spiraled into addiction and eventually death from a fentanyl overdose.
See, this should have been with the COVID public health stuff. This is a public health crisis. Why isn't this group together? Like, I don't know, guys. I'm seeing like lots of missed opportunities for a really nice cohesive vision here. A lot of missed opportunities. A lot of laundry list of policies and problems. Here's the problem. My administration did this. It has these 3 elements that worked really well. It's unprecedented, but everyone agrees to it anyway. Even though it's radical, everybody agrees to it.
You got it. So let's launch a major surge to stop fentanyl production and the sale and trafficking with more drug detection machines.
I think it is. I think they must have been doing the finish the job as part of the speech construction, but if that's all they got, that's terrible. They have so much better stuff. Like, finish the job is terrible because it could be easily flipped. It's vague. There were so many more powerful things that Biden said that would have been much better, much better things to tweet out.
We give them greater access to mental health care at their schools. We must finally hold social media companies accountable for experimenting they're doing running children for profit. It's time to pass bipartisan legislation to stop big tech from collecting personal data on our kids and teenagers online, ban targeted advertising to children, and impose stricter limits on the personal data that companies collect on all of us. Third, let's do more to keep this nation's one truly sacred obligation to equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home. Job training.
This is kind of interesting what
and their spouses as they come to return to civilian life. Helping veterans.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Joe.
Because no one should be homeless in America, especially someone who served the country.
Yeah, I'm looking at the POTUS Twitter now, and it seems to be just like triplets of different things from the
discussion when I asked him to take the job.
from the speech.
I'm glad he did. We were losing up to 25 veterans a day on suicide.
We're going to keep that up for the
Now
discussion
we're losing
afterwards. If you guys
17
want to
a day
hang out,
to the
talk when
silent
this thing's
scourge
done
of
a little bit.
suicide. 17 veterans a day are committing suicide. More than all the people being killed in the wars.
This would be a nice couplet
Folks,
with the war support
VA
thing, the
is
Ukraine
doing
support
everything
thing.
it can, including expanding mental health screening,
Human dignity.
proven programs that recruits veterans.
Why are we doing finish the job when we
help
could be
other
talking
veterans
about
understand
dignity
what
in
they're
work,
going through. Get them the
dignity
help
in
they
life,
need.
and dignity in the world? That's a nice
We gotta do
triplet there.
more. And fourth,
Our administration is about dignity, and bipartisan support is the way we support dignity in this country and in the world. And that's easy.
Our goal is to
Who
cut
are
the
his
cancer death
speechwriters?
rates at least by 50% in the next
Good, Kyle. Yeah,
25
right.
years.
Okay, good defense, Kyle. I'll
Turn
give you
more
that one.
cancers from death
He did say hello
sentences
3 times. Thank you,
treatable
thank you, thank you. And
diseases.
he's also said look it up,
Provide
probably.
more support for patients
Some
and their
multiple of 3
families.
times. And
It's personal to so many, so many of us in this audience. Joining us are Morris and Candice, an Irishman and a daughter of immigrants from Panama. They met and fell in love in New York City and got married in the same chapel Jill and I got married in New York City. Kindred spirits. He wrote us a letter about his little daughter, Ava, and I saw her just before I came over. She was just a year old when she was diagnosed with rare kidney disease.
I do like this long-time tradition of petitioning the president with a letter.
11 rounds of radiation.
That's like a classic
8
American
rounds of
trope, you know.
Chemo, 1 kidney removed. Given a 5%
Well, not only it's a right in the
survival
First Amendment, the right to petition the
rate. He wrote
government.
how in the darkest moments he thought, if she goes, I can't stay. Many of you have been through that as well. Jill and I understand that like so many of you. And he read Jill's book describing our family's cancer journey and how we tried to steal moments of joy where we could with Bo. For them, that glimmer of joy was the half smile of their baby girl. It meant everything to them. They never gave up hope. Little Ava never gave up hope. She turns 4 next month. They just found out Ava's beating the odds, is on her way to being cured of cancer. And she's watching from the White House tonight if she's not asleep already. For the lives we can save. For the lives we can save and the lives we've lost, let this be a truly American moment.
See, that's
It
great.
rallies the country and the world together and prove that we can still do big things.
Yeah, for the lives that we
20 years ago,
saved, for
in
the
the
lives that we
leadership of
lost,
President
let's
Bush
remember, we can still do big
and
things.
countless advocates
Americans
and champions.
can
He
still do big
undertook a
things. That's
bipartisan
great.
effort through PEPFAR to transform the global fight against HIV/AIDS. It's been a huge success. He thought big. He thought large.
Why isn't this
He
grouped with the
moved.
pandemic stuff again?
I
The speech is
believe
all
we
over
can
the
do
place.
Same thing with cancer.
There's that cane again. Watch out.
Let's end cancer as we know it. Cure some cancers.
Bono, yay.
Once and for all. Folks, there's one reason why we've been able to do all of these things.
Why is Bono there?
Our democracy itself. It's the most fundamental thing of all. With democracy, everything's possible. Without it, nothing is. For the last few years, our democracy has been threatened and attacked, put at risk, put to the test in this very room on January the 6th. And then just a few months ago, an unhinged big lie, assailant unleashed a political violence, the home of the then Speaker of the House of Representatives, using the very same language the insurrectionists used as they stalked these halls and chanted on January 6th. Here tonight in this chamber is a man who bears the scars of that brutal attack, but is as tough and as strong, as resilient as they get.
Oh, it's
My
Paul
friend
Pelosi, yeah.
Paul Pelosi. Paul, stand up.
I like his hat. He's got good style. Looking pretty good. I wonder where this stuff should go. The insurrection stuff and the political divide, violence stuff. Where should that go? House of the People.
But such a heinous act should have never happened.
I feel like I kind of want to get the
Let's all speak
transcript,
out.
Put it in a Word
There's no
document.
place for political
Rearrange it the way
violence in
I would
America.
put it.
We have to protect the right to
put it
vote,
out on
not
my blog.
suppress the fundamental right. Honor the results of our
should do
elections,
that.
not subvert the will
No.
of people. We have to uphold the rule of law and restore trust in our institutions of democracy. And we must give hate and extremism in any form no safe harbor. Democracy must not be a partisan issue. It's an American issue. Every generation of Americans has faced a moment where they have been called to protect our democracy, defend it, stand up for it. And this is our moment. My fellow Americans, we meet tonight at an inflection point, one of those moments that only a few generations ever face, where the direction we now take is going to decide the course of this nation for decades to come. We're not bystanders of history. We're not powerless before the forces that confront us. It's within our power of we, the people.
See, maybe the speechwriters
We're
do
facing
think
the
like
test of
me.
our time.
And Biden just doesn't like this
We
kind
have
of
to be
stuff.
the
He likes the
nation we've
folksy,
always
like,
been at
we're
our
building a
best.
bridge.
Optimistic, hopeful.
Got a shock for you,
forward-looking.
friends.
A nation
Finish
that
the
embraces
job,
light
you know.
over dark, hope over fear, unity over division, stability over chaos. We have to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. We're good people. The only nation in the world built on an idea. The only one.
More on the blog, as always. Little advertisement for my Substack, SophisticSteve.substack.com.
Other nations are defined by geography, ethnicity. But we're the only nation based on an idea that all of us, every one of us, is created equal in the image of God. A nation that stands as a beacon of the world.
So one of the things people like to look for
Nation.
is Biden's
The new
Catholic
age of possibility.
winks, where he's
I've come to
showing he's the Catholic.
Fulfill my constitutional obligation.
People tend to look for that. That might have been
Report
one of
the
these
State the
moments.
Union. And here's my report.
People really like to
Because
look
the
for
soul of
that.
this nation
People are always
is
nervous
strong.
about Catholic presidents.
Because the backbone of this nation is strong.
Backbone
Because
again?
The people of this nation
Weird.
are strong. The State of the Union is strong.
Yeah, you really can't say anything else. State of the Union is strong. Nancy Pelosi acting like she's heard it for the first time. That's a really common, repetitive trope. Of course it's strong. We have to say it's strong. What else are you going to say?
I'm not new to this
Can't be
place.
creative there.
I stand here tonight having served as long as about any one of you have ever served here. But I've never been more optimistic about our future, about the future of America.
See, that's a good opening
Just
line,
remember
isn't
who
it?
we are. We're the United States of America, and there's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together.
Good emotional
God
appeal. This
bless
is
you all. May God
peroration
bless
stuff
you.
is like raising emotions,
Thank you.
getting people emotionally invested and involved, showing people the third way out of the different ways of doing things. Well, he's done. Almost 90 minutes, I guess. All right, what do you guys think? Jump in the chat. Let's do it. Let's see. What are we going to talk about, folks? Folks. I mean, I think I was disappointed with it. I think there needs to be a lot more cadence and a lot more connection of the different parts. Excuse me, Raphael Warnock from Georgia.
Hey, Big John.
John Tester. Yeah, please don't touch my face. That's a nice little clip. C-SPAN always shows the most interesting kind of clips of a little bit of like backstage action. Everybody coming over to say hi to Joe. All right, thoughts. I mean, I think that it was a big mess. The last third of it was a huge mess, and a lot of things got very little treatment, less time than the resort tax got time for. That maybe might have been, that might have needed equal time with the resort tax. A little weird. So you had 3 acts, I think. 3 different things that he could have done, I think, differently. The first one, he should have started with the stuff of, like, I've served here longer than anyone. I've seen this come. I've seen this go. I've done this. I've walked into this chamber many times for State of the Union. But I have more optimism. The State of the Union is not as great as it could be. But I'm more optimistic than ever. Because my administration, through bipartisan work with this body, with this Congress, is restoring the dignity and the economy of the American people. It's a new Congress, and I want to congratulate the new Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Right? See, that's where he started, right? It was kind of, I think it's nice to focus on, there's a new Congress, so there's new stuff to do. I think that's really good. But I do not like the jumping around between things. Like, the first point should have been about infrastructure. That's a huge win for him. The economic stimulus bill, the Inflation Reduction Act. These are all huge policy wins that he could have talked about quite a bit. And that should have been talked about financial, job, and economic dignity. And then he should have moved into COVID, talked about that in terms of health dignity, pandemic, public health crisis. Then he can move into talking about the dignity of all people, and this is the People's House. You can talk about that. You can talk about the People's House internationally with Ukraine, and then you can talk about the insurrectionists and the language of the insurrectionists being inappropriate, insurrectionist ideas being inappropriate in the People's House. That's not dignity. So that way, when people walk away from the speech, they can be like, oh, this is an administration about dignity, about 3 different kinds of dignity: economic dignity, health, and rights. Maybe. I mean, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but that's what I thought would be better. And, the cadence has to be there. You can't just say, the device that he's running with is to say, we had a big problem, but then we passed this act, and it's the most X act of all time, the most radical, the biggest. It's unprecedented. However, it had all these things in it that everybody who should hate it already agreed with. And then here are the 3 parts of it. I mean, Kara says she disagrees the State of the Union is good. He said it was strong. Strong. Maybe strong, but not good. Like too much hot sauce. Overall, it was fine. Shrug. Attention was split. That's another thing too. Is like, how do you make this an attentive speech? There was an op-ed, I think, in the Times about how to make the State of the Union something Americans would watch. If you watch, there's a pretty good argument for this. If you watch corporate earnings calls and corporate earnings speeches, that's a lot more entertaining, right? It's professionally shot. It's the lighting is good. There's all kinds of good stuff. I think that could be done a lot better. Justice Kennedy and is that Souter there? I can't tell. Retired justices get to come, I guess. Or is that Breyer? No, that's Breyer. Stephen Breyer. He just looks really old. I couldn't identify him. Kennedy and Breyer hanging out. They should have put him in the balcony and been like, they could have been like the guys from the Muppets. That would have been better heckling than Marjorie Taylor Greene. I would prefer that. It would have been much better. But yeah, God bless C-SPAN. I love this kind of coverage. This is great. They should have the pool cameras, and the networks take from the pool. But the pool cameras, I think, are He says "by the way" too much too. He just said it right there too. By the way, too much. What were some of the most overused phrases you think in the speech that kind of killed it? Like when we talk about attention being split, like only a whack ass rhetorician like myself has got the time to sit here and like concentrate on this thing, and it's hard to maintain attention in this day and age on something like this. Remember with the controversy of TikTok expanding the length of TikTok videos to 3 minutes. It was like someone had died. Somebody important had died. So attention is really in short supply here. So it's like, how do you maintain focus? You got to structure the speech differently. You have to pick and choose these policy victories. You can't just list them all out like a list of everything you're going to get at the grocery store. You have to talk about the things at the grocery store that are the most important. Yeah, I'm serious, Kyle. That's a good one. I'm serious. We could have played Biden bingo. We can make a bingo card. I'm serious. Finish the job. I do not like finish the job. Let's take a look at the POTUS Twitter. I think you guys would like that. We can still hear the background. Let's take a look at the Twitter. So here's the stream. They had the stream right up front from the White House, which is oddly, the White House has the same pool camera as C-SPAN. Because the American people are union strong, let's finish the job. They are doing what Kyle's talking about. Souls Nation, the backbone. Backbone is so weird. There's a big... Oh, and they have these photo shots of the girl who beat cancer. I'm not sure what that's about. Let's end cancer. Sure, that's uncontroversial. Fentanyl, let's stop fentanyl and opiate addiction. Absolutely. I mean, these are the things that are the big flags he's planting on things like that, but without connecting it to the value of human dignity and the broad scope of what human dignity means. It falls flatter than it could have. I just think you got to have more than... You know, you gotta have more than just these individual kind of successes. You know what I mean? I'm gonna do side split for a second here. Matt Lav 10, welcome to the stream. Hope you enjoyed the commentary. Do you think the official trappings of the speech, its decorum, had an impact on the centrist extremist perception of the House GOP? I mean, not really. I think that they do it to themselves. So the people who like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, and her disruptive comments, or people who like Matt Gaetz' smirk, and people who like Lauren Boebert shaking her head, or Ted Cruz laughing about border security, they're going to like them anyway, no matter what they do. So they're appealing to the base. I don't think it's going to do anything like that. I do think that what he's doing is trying to set a tone of giving credit for a lot of accomplishments that many Republicans there voted against, and trying to give them credit for helping work out the bill. That's why he said weird things like, thank you for voting against it, too. Because I think he's trying to say that bipartisan disagreement is what has allowed success. It never came out like that, but I think that's what he's trying to go for, because he knows he's got giant fights ahead and they're not going to be pretty, and he knows that Kevin McCarthy is not a strong ally, unfortunately. He's not a strong speaker. He's probably one of the weakest speakers in memory. And so I think he can't rely on McCarthy to help whip up the votes. So I think he's got to say, look, my success was bipartisan. There's nothing new here. I'm not intimidated. I'm not worried. I'm not scared. This is the way we've gotten the success we've gotten. I think that was the theme he was going for. But looping the Republicans in on things like dignity and public health crisis and stuff like that would have been good too. I think that would have been great. I was worried it was too long. God, I love C-SPAN. C-SPAN is a national treasure. How did being in the chair impact McCarthy's credibility with MAGA set? Well, you notice he didn't stand up and say order. He just kind of shushed him and shook his head. I mean, he's giving off stepdad vibes, right? like Boebert, Gates, Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're like, you're not my real dad. You're not my real dad. You can't send me off to my room. You're not my real dad. He gives stepdad vibes. Like, he's not the real, he's like, okay, kids, quiet down. And they just don't take him seriously. I think he did try to call out the dignity Foster when he's like, look it up. These are the facts. Look it up. He's like, well, some of you are saying that. Some Republicans are saying that. He's trying to hold them accountable to their words. And the fact that there's a gap between what they say in their home state and what they say on right-wing podcasts and what they say out in the media and what they say in the chamber. And he's trying to hold them accountable to the policies they're floating out to their supporters there, I would say. So, who's doing the Republican response? Does anybody know in the chat?
Thank you so much for your words. They speak exactly to my constituents in my district, and I know that they're really going to appreciate it.
What's your district include?
8th District of Colorado.
Yeah, I just don't think those people are affected by that, Foster. I just don't think that they care. I mean, they're going to see any of that as a palette for them to paint a picture on. They kind of welcome that. I think Biden actually handled the disruptions pretty well. I kind of like to see Congress return to a more boisterous kind of thing instead of the more formal, like remember in the past, it was just like, oh, so-and-so didn't stand up. That's incredibly rude. Remember that? Remember those days? I kind of like a little bit more fire, you know? Huckabee Sanders was she there? Is she around there? She's the governor of Arkansas currently, I think. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, right? Isn't that correct? Well, Kevin, how does it feel, man? You got your dream job? Oh, she's giving the response. Oh, that'll be really interesting. You guys want to stick around and do that one too? I'm game if you guys are. Let's stick around and do the Republican response. I do like watching this kind of like floor stuff of all the freshman Congress people being like, "Can you get a picture of the president and I?" And he's like, "Oh, who's taking the picture? Where's this going?" Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, that's exactly my point, Foster. I think finish the job. Yeah, we're going to finish the job. We're going to roll back the Obama, Biden nightmare that we've been in. Yeah, we're going to finish the job. We're going to make sure to stop all the rights restrictions. We're going to stop. I wonder if we'll see tomorrow Nikki Haley say something in the media about this. I think Nikki Haley will be on Fox tomorrow. Because Nikki Haley is about to announce that she's running for president if she hasn't already. That's what the New York Times is reporting. So I think that might be a moment of Kairos, a little opportunity to kind of give a response that would be like, here's my brand of republicanism. So a lot of Republicans are looking for who the party leader is. Who's the leader of the Republican Party? It's not Kevin McCarthy. Is it Mitch McConnell? Who is it? So there's an interesting leadership void there. And it's certainly not the backbencher rowdy crew. Yeah, and it also, the more I think about it, I think I need to go read the transcript because I feel like the speechwriters were like, we're not going to use that. And I think he put it in there because if you look at the moments where he's saying, finish the job, that's a hucksterism, a Biden kind of country hucksterism, right? That wouldn't be something that these speechwriters would put in with the things that other things they were saying about dignity in work, dignity in the economy, things like that. I don't know. It is unimaginative. Finish the job might be the election slogan. I think Kyle might have mentioned that earlier too. Kara, good night. Thank you for joining us. I think it's going to be interesting to see Sarah Huckabee Sanders speak. We haven't seen her speak. I haven't seen her speak. I didn't follow the Arkansas governor's race at all, even though I was born in Arkansas. I probably should have. I probably have some like need to like see how my ancestral homeland is doing, but I don't. So I think it'd be interesting to see what she sounds like when out being the press secretary. C-SPAN is worth whatever it costs, man. So freaking good. Like, you're not going to get this access on regular TV.
Every time I sat down with Barack.
You think so? So Matt thinks that Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to be her effort, or do you mean Nikki Haley? I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Her speech will be her effort to claim the post-Trump mantle of control of the National Party. I don't think that's the way to go. I think you try to do that. If you get too close to Trump, it's too hot potatoes, you know? Even Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has Donald Trump on speed dial, apparently, isn't doing that. Lauren Boebert's not doing that. Matt Gaetz is not doing that. So I think that rhetorical plan is to kind of, like, what can you salvage from the Trump vision and then twist it into your own and show that you have some unique take on it that gets you people talking about you in that vision and not Donald Trump in that vision, I think is going to be her goal. But I wonder if she'll just take a rebuttal stance and be like, we don't have a lot good to look at. We have a lot of promise, but I think is like to back off. She might, I don't know, she might run. I don't know. That's true, Kyle. Like, that's a good strategy for response speeches is what should you take away from this going forward? They're going to try to control the discourse. So what do you think it is that Biden wants us to take away from this? That he's had amazing success, they're doing great stuff, but we're only a part of the way there, and it's common sense, very easy common sense stuff that needs to be completed. And we just got to finish it, and it's just kind of like, why haven't we finished it yet? This is stupid. Why haven't we finished it yet? I think that's what we're supposed to take away. And that we're strong, and that together we can fix anything, and he's optimistic, even though he's been in that room for longer than I've been alive, etc. Yeah, it was a kind of a campaign speech. That's another thing about State of the Union speeches at this point are kind of campaign speeches. But they're also buyer's remorse speeches too sometimes. Who's he talking to there? Who's that?
Sir, good to see you. Thanks for your time tonight. And want to catch up with you again on the California water. We let 500,000 acres go dry in agriculture last year, and I don't know where the food's going to come from.
I don't either. I've been out there so time.
Yeah, appreciate it. So, we need Bureau of
So the two houses now resolved.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
The House will come to order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I move that the message of the President be referred to the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union.
And it took President Biden 20 minutes to get from the podium out the door of the House as he greeted members and got lobbied on legislation.
Are they going to take calls now, I guess?
Well, in about 5 minutes, the response.
Oh, 5 minutes till
Republican,
Sarah Huckabee
Governor
Sanders.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
I don't know. What would be a good line for her?
From Little Rock that begins in about 5 minutes.
What would be a
Now,
good
the
line for
president
her?
has a full schedule this week. He will be traveling and talking about some of the issues in depth that he mentioned tonight. He's got an economic speech in Madison, Wisconsin tomorrow. He'll be talking about Medicare in Tampa. And
Yeah,
back
weird
on
first statement, yeah.
Washington on Friday for the National Governors Association and a meeting with the re-elected president of Brazil, Lula da Silva. Now, after Sarah Huckabee Sanders, we're going to be taking your
Yeah, the work never ends is a good one.
your voices, your response to what the president had to say, and
I think she might try for something like, let's finish the job, but let's do it smartly without big government oversight, without big government interference.
Democrats and 748-8922 for.
You guys gonna call in?
Now, of course, you can send
I'm not
a
gonna
text
call in, I
message
don't
as
think.
Well, if you want to, if you can't get through on the phones, 202-748-8903 is that number. Just remember to include your first name and your city if you would. Let's see what Greta Brawner has found in reaction to the speech.
CBS reporter Ed O'Keefe tweeting out this about the speech: the most ruckus, rancorous reception for a president at his State of the Union.
Yeah, read
address I
history,
can
Ed.
recall. And I cannot recall seeing a speaker try to shush members of his or her caucus before like Speaker McCarthy tried tonight.
It's because he has no
One of the
power.
most ruckus moments came tonight.
God, I love that
at
coat.
this point during his speech.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their
No,
fair
she needs
share,
a
some
style lesson
Republicans-
from Marjorie.
Some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset.
Yeah,
I'm
see,
not
now we're
saying
starting to
it's
see
a
the
majority.
clips right now. It's already starting to be decided.
Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if
That is kind of a funny
Congress
line.
doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you.
All right, before this thing starts, I think I'm going to go get a little water. I kind of need it.
The idea
If you enjoy the commentary, you want to read more of my thoughts on rhetoric, you can always subscribe to my Substack,
being threatened.
sophisticsteve.substack.com. I'll leave you with Uncle Joe here for a second. Well, not Uncle Joe. What do we call him? What was his cool name?
President Biden's address, one of the most.
I don't know. I'll be right back. I'm going to get some water before we get this response going here.
Ahead of tonight's speech, there was this poll put out by the Washington Post that found on this question of the debt ceiling and whether or not there should be spending cuts included, 65% of U.S. adults polled said the debt payment and federal spending should be handled separately by the president and Congress. We'll bring more reaction from the State of the Union address later after we hear from the Republican governor, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Peter.
And Sarah Huckabee Sanders was just elected this past November. She took.
What do we
office
make of those weird
on
stats like,
January 10th, and she won by 28.
These weird kind of stats like how many times the applause happened and all that. It's kind of like, that's sort of like political hacks, right? That's like for people who are very
1996 to 2007.
kind of weirdly.
And Governor Sanders met her husband Brian on her father's 2008 presidential
Oh, that is an
campaign.
interesting point, Matt. Matt says it's not even a significant minority.
After the
Line was a good example of how Biden was trying to drive a further wedge between McCarthy and those who didn't support his bid for speaker. But
on social
I mean, McCarthy's your best chance to get what you want.
or on our social
Like, why wouldn't you at least try to work with McCarthy, and then you can really show how the Republican Party is under the control of the backbenchers, as they would call them in UK backbenchers, like people who are not
and it's available
that interested in governing.
at all locations where you download your apps. That is a governor's mansion in Little Rock, where Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be speaking from in just a minute.
Pretty beautiful. I wouldn't mind living in the governor's mansion. Oh, there she is.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Being a mom to 3 young children taught me not to believe every story I hear. So forgive me for not believing much of anything I heard tonight from President Biden. From out-of-control inflation and violent crime to the dangerous border crisis and threat from China, Biden and the Democrats have failed you. They know it, and you know it.
That's a very good
And
start.
it's time for a change. Tonight, let us reaffirm our commitment to a timeless American idea that government exists not to rule the people, but to serve the people. Democrats want to rule us with more government control.
This is very good.
That's not who we are. America is the greatest country the world has ever known because we're the freest country the world has ever known, with a people who are
See, but
strong
Biden doesn't have anything to
and
fight against
resilient.
this because he's got the value of
5
dignity.
months ago, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer.
Would have been much better against her
It was a hard time for our family,
counter value of freedom.
particularly our
That would have been
kids,
super cool.
Scarlett, Huck, and George. But we kept our faith. And
I like how one of her kids is named Huck.
thanks to exceptional doctors here in Arkansas,
Good name.
a successful surgery, and the grace of God, I am cancer-free. Through it all, I couldn't
She's
help
her
but think
own
about my mom.
cancer-free gallery
She
guest.
was 20 years old and into her first
Nice
year
move.
of marriage when she was diagnosed with spinal cancer. The doctors told her she might not live, and if she did live, they said she'd never walk again. And if she did walk, she'd definitely never have children. The daughter she was told she'd never have was just sworn in as the new governor of Arkansas and is speaking to you tonight. Adversity and fear of the unknown can paralyze us, but faith propels us to charge boldly ahead. We can't stand still in the face of great challenges. You and I were put on this earth for such a time as this, to charge boldly ahead.
I wonder if
I'll be the first to admit,
she'll be able to do the cadence thing,
President
because she's
Biden
really set this up
and I
very
don't have a
nicely.
lot in common. I'm for freedom, he's for government control. At 40, I'm
Yeah,
the
it's
youngest
nice.
governor
I love
in the
it.
country.
That's so good.
And at 80, he's the oldest president in American history.
Is that
I'm
true?
the first woman
Reagan?
to lead my state. And he's the first man to surrender his presidency to a woke mob that can't even tell you what a woman is. In the radical left
Powerful
America,
contrast there. That's nice.
Washington taxes you and lights your hard-earned money on fire. But you get crushed with high gas prices, empty grocery shelves, and our children are taught to hate one another on account of their race, but not to love one another or our great country. Whether Joe Biden believes this madness or is simply too weak to resist it.
This is very
his
cool, because what she's
administration
doing is taking away
completely
attention from the
by the radical
fragmented Republican
Dividing lines
caucus
in
in the
America is no longer
Congress,
between right or
and
left.
talking about how it's actually been a
Choice
hijacking of the Democratic Party.
normal
I don't know if Joe Biden believes it, but he has to bow to it.
time
It's a
for
very,
a
very
new
clever move.
generation of Republican leadership. Upon taking office just a few weeks ago, I signed executive orders to ban CRT, racism, and indoctrination in our schools, eliminate the use of derogatory term Latinx in our government, repealed COVID orders, and said never again to authoritarian mandates and shutdowns. Americans want common sense from their leaders, but in Washington, the Biden administration is doubling down on crazy. President Biden inherited the fastest economic recovery on record, the most secure border in history, cheap, abundant, homegrown energy, fast rising wages, a rebuilt military, and a world that was stable and at peace. But over the last 2 years, Democrats destroyed it all. Despite Democrats' trillions in reckless spending and mountains of debt, we now have the worst border crisis in American history. As a mom, my heart breaks for every parent who has lost a son or daughter to addiction. 100,000
See, that's a weird
Americans
transition. What is that?
are now killed from drug overdoses.
She must be thinking the
Largely
border's the
from
source of
fentanyl
drugs.
pouring across our southern border.
Yeah, you see, this is just
But
like
the
not
Biden
held up by the
administration
research.
refuses to secure the border and save American lives.
The border
After
crisis,
years
the
of
border
Democratic
crisis is a hard
tactic
thing to
on
talk
law
about, because you have to talk about
calls to defund the police,
economic instability
violent
caused by the
criminals
United
run
States and
free,
South America and Central
while
America
law
across
abiding
party
families
lines.
live in fear.
Economic destabilization to benefit the
Beyond our
American
border from
economy. And
Afghanistan to
that's a tough
Ukraine,
sell
from North Korea
to say, well, we brought this on
Iran,
ourselves. Nobody wants to hear that.
President
It's
Biden
kind of safer to say, well, this is a
our nation
drug-infested kind of
and
thing.
the world at risk.
These are drug dealers coming. But the
President's
human
refusal
trafficking
to
thing would be
stand
good,
up
too, to kind
China,
of paint it
our
in that
most
way.
formidable adversary is dangerous and unacceptable. President Biden is unwilling to defend our border, defend our skies, and defend our people.
It's a nice
He is
triplet
simply
there.
unfit to serve as commander-in-chief. And while you reap the consequences,
See, the speech might be
of victories,
factually wrong.
the
Like,
Biden
there might be some things in it that are
administration
factually wrong, but
is
she's
more
also playing
interested
fast and loose,
in
like
woke
Biden did with
fantasies
things
than
like
the hard
the worst,
realities
the
of
largest, the
life.
fastest. Like, these are
Most
qualifying
Americans simply wanna
statements that
live
don't
their
have a
lives
statistic
in
behind
freedom
them.
and peace.
And there might be
We
some
are under
information there that
attack
you
from
could
a
read that
cultural
way,
war
but she's doing the
we
reading
didn't
for you
start
and not
never
practicing
wanted to fight.
evidence
Every
transparency
day
or source
we were told we
transparency,
must
which I think is
protect our
vital.
rituals, salute their
Ethical
flags, and
communication.
worship
She's
their
not doing that.
flag.
Politicians don't do that.
All while
Biden
big
didn't do it
government
either.
colludes with big tech to strip away the most American thing there
She's
is.
playing fast and loose with this stuff,
Your
but what's
freedom
most
of
important
speech.
here, this speech is going to be more memorable.
Crazy.
What do Republicans stand for? They stand for freedom.
Make
They stand for
no
strong
mistake.
economy. They
Republicans will not
stand for
surrender this
just
fight.
secure the border.
We will lead with courage.
She came out
and
swinging
with
too,
fight,
which is surprising.
not what's
No
politically
cooperation at all.
correct or convenient. Republicans believe in an America
Excuse
where
me.
strong families thrive in safe communities, where jobs are abundant and paychecks are rising, where the freedom our veterans shed their blood to defend is the birthright of every man, woman, and child. These are the principles Republican governors are fighting for, and in Washington, under the leadership of Senate Republicans and Speaker Kevin McCarthy, we will hold the Biden administration accountable.
Did you back McCarthy there?
Down the street from where I sit,
I don't think she's one of
my
these
alma
extreme, crazy
Little Rock Central
Republicans.
High. As a student there, I will never forget watching my dad, Governor Mike Huckabee, and President Bill Clinton hold the doors open to the Little Rock Nine. Doors that 40 years earlier had been closed to them because they were black. Today, those children once barred from the schoolhouse are now heroes memorialized in bronze at our State House. I'm proud of the progress our country has made, and I believe giving every child access to a quality education, regardless of their
Yeah,
race or
Kyle, the
income,
thing that I'm thinking about is the
the
resort
civil rights
tax
issue of our
and
day. Tomorrow, I will unveil an education
the
package that will be
weirdness,
the
that
most
weird stuff in the
far-reaching,
middle, like
bold conservative education
long list of
reform in the
accomplishments and stuff.
country.
But you see how, like,
My plan empowers parents.
earlier at the very beginning of the stream, I was talking about
choices,
motives, and I think you can see how this
improves
plays out now.
literacy
Like,
and career
how are you
readiness,
supposed to
and
feel
helps put a
about
good
Biden's speech?
teacher
How are you
in
supposed to feel about
every
this? This speech is very
classroom
motivating.
by
This is
increasing their
accusing
starting salary
Joe
to one
Biden
of
of
the
particular
lowest,
motives, the Democrats
one of the
particular
highest
motives,
in
and
the
then saying,
nation.
here's why I think they have
Here
those
in
motives,
Arkansas,
and then being very
the
plain about our
Department of
motives. And it's all talked about in
Republicans are
values, and
working
it's all
to
talked about
end the
adjusting
policy
our attitude towards the
of
parties.
trapping kids in failing
This is a
schools
very
and
smartly put
sentencing
together
them
versus
to a
Biden's
lifetime
speech, which
of
was kind of like a collection of data.
We will educate.
But also, it tends
indoctrinate
to
our kids.
it tends to land
put
this way
students
now.
on a
I'm
path to
probably going to
success.
offend people listening to this, but it tends to
It's
feel
time
like
for
the
a new
conservatives are
generation
talking
to lead.
a lot more in terms
This
of
is our
values, and
moment.
Democrats a lot
This
more
is
like facts
our
speak for themselves. Look it up, Joe Biden said. If you
The
look
new
it up,
generation
it's never
born in the
persuasive.
waning
People do not
decades
make
of the last
decisions based on
century,
facts. They always
shaped by economic
massage those
boom,
decisions. They always
stock market
encapsulate
rise,
them. They put
forged by the
ribbons on
triumph of
them.
the
They put
Cold
glitter
War
on them,
and the
whatever, and they
tragedy
make them look a certain.
of
They angle them.
9/11.
They put lights on them.
A generation brimming
That's what
with
she's doing.
passion
She's right to
and
do
new
that. That's what we
ideas
call
to
rhetoric. That's
solve age-old
persuasion.
problems.
They're right to do
A
that.
generation more
But
to our deepest
she's
values
factually incorrect on
and
some
oldest
things. But who's going to
traditions.
call her out? Plus,
Yet
that's not going to
unafraid
be
to
memorable.
challenge
It's going to be
the
like
present order
the
and find a better
tsunami
way
of
forward.
different things, like the border,
We
violence,
seize this
racial
moment
violence,
together. America can
racism
once
from
again be the
CRT.
land of the free
This
and the
assault
home
on
of the brave.
freedom is the problem.
During my 2.5 years at the White House, I traveled on every foreign
I don't
trip
know. I
with the
feel like
president.
was he prescriptive? I feel like he
Trip I
was
will
like,
never
I've done
forget.
about 3/4
On
of it,
December 25th of 2018.
and the rest of it's common
husband
sense.
Brian
And
and I had just
I've
come
worked
to a
bipartisan
paper
before. We can get
that
this
was
done.
shoved
Let's
into
do it.
Every corner of our house.
I don't know how
thanks to
prescriptive
our
he was.
three
He didn't make it
kids.
sound easy, but
When I
the
had to
big
walk
thing
out
that
on my
is
own
is
family
really
for
weird about
Christmas,
his speech was just like
unable to tell them where
Problem,
I was going that night. The place
solution.
I'd be traveling was so
The solution is
dangerous.
unprecedented
I
and
didn't want
wildly
anybody to
crazy.
know
The solution is also the
president was
common
going to
sense
be
of
on the
those
ground
opposed to this kind of
even for a
policy.
few hours.
Here are 3 things it did, but we need to
boarded
do
Air
more.
Force
Let's
One
finish the job. It's
in
not,
complete and total
it's
darkness.
weird.
There were no lights on the plane, no lights on the runway. Our phones and computers shut down and turned in.
Why is she talking about 9/11?
We were going completely off the grid. Nearly 12 hours later, in the pitch black of night, we landed in the war-torn part of western Iraq.
Well, she definitely has better
It was
delivery.
again a similar scene. No lights on the plane.
Sure, I mean, better delivery and better
lights
speechwriter
on the
means
runway.
better speech.
The only thing you could
I mean,
see
that's
was
it. There isn't
coming from
anything
about
other
a
than
mile
appearance
away
in rhetoric. We're dealing in
in
a
a
pure
dining
appearance.
hall where hundreds
There's
of
surface
troops
and then there's the
who were
surface,
in the fight
and that's it.
against
Yeah,
ISIS
that's all we got.
had gathered expecting to
Now,
celebrate
you,
this
as a
with
citizen,
senior
can take this
military
discourse and
leadership
use it
from
to
around
prove
the
different
region.
things in your discourse with other people.
They
You can
had
say,
absolutely
she's
no
factually incorrect about the
idea
border and the fentanyl
that the
thing.
president and first
That's easy to
lady
look up.
were about to walk into that room.
You can talk about
And when they did,
why banning CRT might not be the
Society
best way to deal with the threat CRT poses. And it does pose a threat, but it's a very
I
positive
hope
threat.
I never forget.
Oh, this is supporting the troops.
Men and women.
No, it's fine. She is
every
reading. She's got a
race,
teleprompter there, but
religion,
she's
and
rehearsed
region,
this too.
Every political party, every
Also, she did point out
demographic
Biden's the
you can
oldest president
imagine
ever, and I think she's kind
started
of pointing to
chanting
his fluency problems. But
perfect unison.
he's got
Over
a good
and
brain. I don't
over
think he has any
and
brain
over
issues,
again.
but he's got old man delivery
USA.
problems and old man
USA.
physical problems.
USA. It was an absolutely perfect picture of what makes our country great.
I don't like this
One of the
part. I
young
think this could have been
soldiers yelled
skipped.
from the back, "Mr. President, I re-enlisted in the military because of you." And the president said, "And son, I'm here because of you." Shortly after, that young soldier came up to me. He said, "Sarah, you have a tough job." I told him, "What I do is nothing. You take bombs and bullets. That's a tough job."
No, it's a gay Foster. I
And the
think people
moment
do
that I
think
know,
of
I'll
speech
share
as
it for
like
the rest of my life.
something
Soldier
put on
reached
top
up
of a
and he
reality.
pulled
Does it
the
represent a
rifle's
reality?
patch
But there's
one
another theory of
shoulder
rhetoric where
placed it
rhetoric
into
shapes
my
reality.
hand.
Rhetoric creates the
Sign of
reality.
ultimate
Just like how
respect.
popcorn was in here earlier, was talking
And
about
said,
building
"Sarah,
a rhetorical future on
might work in
garbage.
this
Like this is extremely bad rhetoric compared to the
Overwhelmed with
2,000,
emotion
2,500 year history
and
of rhetoric.
speechless.
There are
Just
people.
hugged
This
him
isn't even
with tears in
like
my
Roman
eyes and
teenagers do a
grateful
better
heart
job than this. This is
for our
garbage, right?
heroes who keep us
But
free.
that's a different era, a different world.
That young man and
So we have to
everyone
work
who
with what we
served
have, and I think
before him,
attention to
all
this
of
stuff and
those
what they're doing can
who
help
serve
you
alongside
persuade
him,
people to vote a certain way, or
and the
persuade people to support a certain
thousands
policy.
we know who will be
And I think that's
called
what real
upon to
democracy
serve
is, and
after
the real power of rhetoric is in your
deserve
daily
to know
life.
they have a country
Using
and a
national
community
discourse
back
like
home
Sanders
doing our
here
part in the fight
to kind of
for
help you
freedom.
see how it works, I think is very powerful. So I think she's going to get a
America is
lot of
great
good press about this
because
speech,
we
I
are
bet.
free.
We'll see what the New York Times says.
Today, our
I'll be
freedom
interested
is
to read
under
New York
attack.
Times. I'm a big New York Times
The
fan. Read the New
America
York
we
Times
love
opinion section tomorrow.
is in danger.
Washington Post maybe would be good
President
too, but
Biden and the Democrats have failed you.
it'd be interesting to
And
see.
it's time for
See,
a change.
repetition. They failed
A
you.
new
It's time for a
generation
change.
of Republican
That's the
leaders
capsulation I'm
are
looking for. Do you see how
stepping
she
up,
took that? She was
not
like,
to be
look, they failed you.
caretakers of the status
Time for a
quo,
change.
but to be change makers for the American people. We know not what the future holds, but we know who holds the future in his hands.
Nice.
And with God as our witness, we will show the world that America is still the
God is our
place
witness is an old
where
trope too. We
freedom
need to give that
reigns
up. We know who
and
holds it in his
liberty
hands.
will
With
never
God's
die.
protective,
Thank you. God bless you.
with God's
And
protective
God
will,
bless
with God's
America.
will, maybe would be better there. That was nice. That was real. I was surprised
Sarah
how good that
Huckabee
was.
Sanders, the new governor of Arkansas.
Now, am I surprised how good that was because of my
Little
predisposition
Rock.
towards
Now it's
Sanders?
your turn, 202 is the area
Or is
code,
that
748-8920
because I
for
don't think we need to
Republicans.
hear these calls, do we?
748-8920 for Democrats.
We can
and
get rid of this.
748-8922
I think,
for Independents. Also, text message 202-748-8903.
He's still with us.
That's for text
Go
message.
away. Okay, I think that we can wrap up some thoughts here. Notice how the entire Congress is staring at me, waiting for my thoughts. I think that says a little something about my credibility. Let me say a couple of things about Sanders, and then we'll take questions from the chat and have a chat in the chat. Maybe Professor Lavery would want to join me in the studio, and we can get some of his thoughts. Maybe he'll return to the studio. He was in the studio earlier. Didn't want to come on the air. Maybe he would like to return to the studio. I'll invite him now if he's willing. That Sanders speech was kind of what it was traditional in terms of what these kind of speeches are like, but I do think that value encapsulation thing is so important to be memorable and to change people's attitudes and be like, yeah, freedom is what I'm about. That's what it's about. And they're against freedom. And what is freedom? It's, doing all the anti-woke stuff. The woke people are against freedom. They, according to Republicans, want people to live a certain way with certain kinds of restrictions, certain kinds of identities. You have to say certain kinds of pronouns. You have to accept certain kinds of things as true, that kind of thing. What's up with my light? I don't want that. Sorry, technical issues. Okay, we're going to turn these lights down a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. No, we don't want it completely off, do we? Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better. I don't look so washed out. I look kind of washed out, but maybe Professor Lavery will join me in the studio and we'll deal with his question. But I think that kind of encapsulation with the value connection is really important. She did a great job with that. They're about control. We're about freedom. How do I prove I'm about freedom? I've signed executive orders to do all the things against all the things that are anti-freedom. The pronouns, the woke stuff, the transgender stuff, the CRT stuff, critical race theory stuff. Without explanation, because people who are going to understand the interpretation of freedom think that stuff is bad anyway. But Biden really should have offered that same kind of encapsulation. Like, what do we think Biden stands for? Right? What does Biden stand for? What, yeah, Kyle's talking about the semiconductor made in America. We're going to make more semiconductors. That's not great compared to we're the party of freedom and we're the party of liberation. And they have the oldest president who is a hostage of the woke mob. This takes away all the attention. You know, it was so bad to talk about the insurrection the way he did, and bad to try to show the divide between mainstream Republicans and their extreme part of the party. Poorly done. There's a way to do that where it'd be extremely powerful. Poorly done. I'm kind of disappointed. It was a bit of a mess of a speech, but when you're the president, you also kind of have a lot of the power. So Sanders doesn't have a lot of power, so she's got to do a much, much, much better job. But I wonder if it's because I had predispositions to her predispositions about what Biden did, which I didn't like. I just expected her not to be that great a speaker, but I think she really did one of the better responses I remember. At least she didn't grab a bottle of water in the middle of it, like some Florida senators like to do. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Last chance to get him up there. Professor Lavery's like, I'm going to turn into a pumpkin in 5 minutes. I just noticed the time. This is way past my bedtime. You guys know I'm like a early bird. Last minute thoughts, last minute questions, anything? Last call. All right, I think it was good. Again, if you're interested, I'll probably put some stuff on the Substack. And also, if you like this, and my podcast is normally on here. And, you know, I'm everywhere pretty much. If you want to support what I do financially, you can support me at ko-fi.com/Steviano. Give me a little tip. Buy me a cup of coffee. Support my caffeine-fueled internet content creation desires. Dan, you're welcome. Maria, thank you for joining. Any last-minute questions? Put them in the chat, or we can talk over on the blog. I'll probably put something like that. But yeah, Foster, that's a good point that Foster offers, watching on Facebook. She started and told us what she was going to talk about, and she felt, yeah, like that's that dumb old Will Rogers advice. Tell them what you're going to talk about. Talk about it. Tell them what you told them. That's kind of what she did. I mean, that's what I mean by a capsule. But in a speech like this, it has to have peaks and valleys. It really does. It has to have peaks and valleys, and those peaks and valleys have to be measured, and it all has to return back to the thesis. So if the goal of the speech is to change my attitude about the Biden administration, that is the word I want to associate with Joe Biden's presidency is dignity, let's say. And I think that might be a good candidate. You can put in the chat if you think there's other candidates that you like better for what you think it would be. But let's say it's the administration of dignity. Okay, you're going to have to return to that word and show us its many different facets and many different variations of how you see that playing out. You can see economically, you can see it in terms of human rights, you can see it in terms of healthcare, from global pandemics to personal reproductive rights. We support dignity. You can't just have a grab bag of weird policies and then jump from the resort tax to police violence. This is weird. It has to follow a pathway to help the audience understand why they should shift the attitude. Now, when you look at Sanders' speech, what is it? Freedom versus big government control, the principle of less federal government. She did a great job. What does freedom look like to Sarah Huckabee Sanders and the Republicans? Freedom looks like common sense, no big giant administrative laws, even though she did giant, big administrative laws about CRT and stuff, kind of. But we won't talk. That's not a contradiction. It's in Arkansas. It's just a state. It can't be big and administrative. It's a state. The federal government is the problem. That was kind of a weird thing. Common sense security for the border. Common sense crime reduction. One thing let me say this too. I know I said I was going to go, but now I'm kind of like getting fired up for Foster's questions here. Theme of dignity versus theme of freedom. That would be a classic battle. That'd be so much better. I wonder if ChatGPT could write a response to the State of the Union. Do you think it could? Do you think it could? Do you think it could? We love it. We love ChatGPT. We love ChatGPT. We love it so much. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Okay, ChatGPT. It's probably going to be better than Biden's. Can you guys see this? Oh, he's talking about freedom now, too. This is very long. You can't see it, Foster? I love ChatGPT. It's become a really good friend of mine. Let me say this. I think it was great of Sanders to not focus so much on crime. Do you remember how much in local races how much there was focus on crime in those campaigns? That there's just crime, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of problems. Oh, Maria, are you really leaving now? No, hopefully she's still around because I think this is funny. Look at how long this is. This is crazy. I have to give that a thumbs up. No, it's fine. It was perfect. Look at that. We're facing a global pandemic that has claimed the lives of too many of our loved ones, strained our healthcare system, and upended the lives of millions of Americans. It's pretty good. Pretty good. We like ChatGPT around here. Friend of the show. Friend of the show. I think that killings thing is dignity. How can we have dignity in our country when law enforcement regularly kills people who look a certain way? There has to be a deep investigation. This happens with such regularity. It can't be individual police to blame. It can't be police departments to blame. It's happening all over the country. There's something fundamentally wrong with law enforcement, and we need to act as a bipartisan Congress to investigate and determine the best path ahead to make sure that all Americans, when they see a police officer, can feel comfortable and trusting that they will be protected and their rights will be respected. It's that easy. Like, I just did that off the top of my head. Now, I'm a professional rhetorician. I have a Ph.D. in it, all this stuff. But it's just not that hard to come up with this stuff. It's just not that hard. You don't even need ChatGPT. As much as I love you, ChatGPT, I can do a much, much better job than you. And thinking people can too, if you just think of a speech as an attitude adjustment. That's all it is, attitude adjustment, right? Just like, what was that wrestler's name? The attitude adjustment? John Cena. His name is John Cena. Yeah, John Cena had the attitude adjustment, right? That was one of his moves, I think. Anyway, point being that if it's about attitude and not about getting all the facts out about how many millions or billions of dollars you saved and how many projects are underway in different states, that's going to be a speech people remember because it makes them feel something. People don't feel stuff when they get data fatigue. They get information fatigue from hearing about billions. Can you even imagine what $30 billion looks like? Do we have visualization for that? It's tough. That's not how you get something across to people. That's not how you do it. All right, well, that's it. That's all I have to say. I think the Sanders speech was great. I think Joe Biden's speech had a lot of problems. I am happy that Joe Biden did come out hard about his own record. I think it was very smart of him to talk about it as a bipartisan record, to show that he's willing to work with some Republicans and then to call out other Republicans for being too crazy. I think the public health stuff, the police violence stuff, the human dignity stuff, undercovered, underutilized. And I think we need that word dignity throughout. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, freedom throughout. I think that's really, really good. Justice and liberty throughout, very well done. Good theme. We can say her speech was about freedom and that they're anti-national government. And we don't need national government to solve our problems. We can do it in our states. Very good Reagan-esque kind of line. Heart of the party there, and gets it away from some of the crazies in Congress. And then she specifically said Kevin McCarthy's the leader of the Republicans on the Hill. So that's a good endorsement from a governor who's probably seen as one of the more in the media governors in the Republican Party. So that's my final take. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for this. It was a lot of fun to do. I should stream more often. Pretty good time. Thank you guys all for watching. And in just a few minutes, the VOD will be available on Twitch, and the live capture video will be available on YouTube. You can watch it. You can sit right back down with a big old bag of popcorn and watch this whole thing right over again in just a minute, as soon as the video gets processed. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'm Dr. Steve Yano, professor of rhetoric, Sophistic Steve, all over the internet. And go read the Substack. I'll post some stuff in there tomorrow. Good night.